Chapter 434. Very quickly, more and more authoritative media outlets reported on this incident, confirming that the two fugitives had gone to steal something and ended up in the hospital after being stung by Feng Zhao's sea slug. Authoritative media outlets didn't have so many clickbait headlines. They were more inclined to state the facts, but they were also more convincing. Following these media outlets' official statements, the public no longer suspected that Feng Zhao had done anything shady. Gradually, more and more people focused their attention on Feng Zhao's sea slug. I want detailed information on the same type of sea slug as Feng Zhao's and how to purchase it. The price is negotiable. A certain Feng Zhao fan excitedly posted on social media platforms. Don't bother looking. There's only one in the entire world, and it carries extraterrestrial genes. This kind of species with extraterrestrial genes isn't easy to raise. I found the article on Feng Zhao's sea slug from back in Pet magazine. It really was valued at 80 million. I remember this. Feng Zhao's one can even emit light and set fire to a batch of sea slug lamps. Those two thieves were also idiots. If they had stolen the sea slug and sold it on the black market, they could have made tens of millions. As professional thieves, all they thought about was eating. That's not exactly the case. I've asked many people. Many people want to raise the kind of sea slug that Feng Zhao raises, but I've never seen anyone willing to secretly raise it on the black market. He doesn't dare raise that sea slug secretly. He has no idea what it eats or how to raise it. Because it's a new hybrid species, he's worried that he might accidentally raise it to death after buying it. Who would want to take the risk of throwing away 80 million? Makes sense. That's why those two fugitives aren't willing to take the risk and just eat a sea slug worth 80 million. Thinking about it that way, it's worth it. Ha 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 ha. Didn't they still end up in the hospital after being stung? Those two idiots. Speaking of which, this incident reminds me of that movie that was released some time ago. It was also about sea slugs. Right. I just thought of it too. The topics on the internet kept changing, and eventually, the movie about the sea slug was mentioned. It was about a sea slug with a high IQ that was about to become a spirit. Originally, everyone had just treated it as a relaxing sci-fi story, but now, the incident at Feng Zhao's house had sparked even more discussion. Thus, very quickly, the direction of the online discussion shifted from the two idiotic fugitives to Feng Zhao's sky-high price of sea slugs, to the possibility of raising sea slugs with extraterrestrial genes and expanding the market, and finally, to whether or not the fairy-grade sea slugs mentioned in the movie existed. Because of this, the box office sales of the Sea Slug movie, which had been nearing the bottom, started to rise again. Feng Zhao received a call from Tan Min when he got home. Back when Feng Zhao had been invited to Huangzhou's Corral District to participate in the Corral Film Festival, he had met Tan Min, a diver who had switched careers to become a director, while buying feed for sea slugs. Feng Zhao had seen Tan Min's character and his goal of advocating for the protection of the marine ecosystem, so he had invested some money for Tan Min to make a movie. The story revolved around sea slugs. Not long ago, when the movie was released, the box office was still okay. It might not be a huge profit, but at least it was profitable and not a loss. After all, it was a small budget, and it wasn't particularly exciting. It could only be considered passable. But after this incident, Feng Zhao had brought up a wave of talk about sea slugs, and Tan Min didn't let this opportunity slip by. Seeing the box office rise once again, Tan Min excitedly gave Feng Zhao a call. A friend of mine said that if we seize this opportunity, we will surely turn a small profit into a big one. We just negotiated the rights to 2 video platforms. Feng Zhao, when the time comes, I will return you at least 3 times the money you invested. And this is just a conservative estimate. Ahem, if we are lucky enough to join the 10 times profit film club, that would be even better. Tan Min spoke with confidence, and his voice was loud and clear. When he mentioned the 10 times profit film club, his eyes flashed with ambition. Only Tan Min himself knew the hardships of going from a diver to a director. His success this time had been a fluke, but at least he had confidence and confidence. Tan Min felt that his future as a director was still very bright. Tan Min wouldn't be stingy with Feng Zhao, his benefactor. After a wave of marketing using Feng Zhao's popularity and seeing the box office rise again, he hurriedly expressed his stance to Feng Zhao. He wasn't someone who would forget favors at the sight of money. Feng Zhao laughed when he heard Tan Min's words. You don't have to pay me back. I will donate all the money I earn from this film to the Marine Environment and Ecology Conservation Foundation. You are familiar with such organizations, so it will be easier for you to handle them." On the other end of the line, Tan Min paused and asked tentatively, All of it? That was a lot of money." "All of it," Fang Zhao confirmed. After confirming that Fang Zhao's intentions weren't to launder money or put on an act, but that he had really decided to donate, Tan Min was suddenly moved. He started to reflect on whether he had been blinded by the profits before his eyes. When he had first switched from a diver to a director, it had been to show people the charm of the ocean and to urge people to protect it. Now, he had almost forgotten his original intentions. I will donate too." Tan Min choked. "You don't have to. You still have to save up some money. This is just the beginning. You still have to prepare for the later works," Fang Zhao said calmly. Tan Min's heated mind had been doused with a basin of water. He had to face reality. That's right, he couldn't compare to Fang Zhao. Fang Zhao was someone who would donate tens of billions of dollars at a whim. After ending the call, Fang Zhao went online to check on the status of Tan Min's film and helped to forward it. Then he once again pondered the burglary at his house. The police's main focus was on the two fugitives. As for details, such as the hybrid sea slug's method of stinging and other details, they had only asked cursory questions. When they found out that the sea slug could open its own tank, they had only been surprised for a while. An $80 million new breed with extraterrestrial genes. Strictly speaking, it could be considered a new species. It was a little special, but it made sense. Even so, Fang Zhao still had to stay in Yinzhou for 2 more days to cooperate with the investigation. The police suspected that someone was targeting Fang Zhao. The two fugitives hadn't picked their targets randomly. The police in charge of investigating the incident had also asked Fang Zhao who he had offended. Were there any suspects? The clues they had obtained from the two fugitives were limited. Fang Zhao really couldn't think of anyone. He had offended a lot of people and stood in the way of a lot of people. He had incurred the jealousy of many. No matter what, boss, you have to take care of your own safety, Nanfeng said anxiously. Also, boss, it's best if you move. You can't stay here anymore. Many entertainment reporters in Yinzhou have their eyes on this place. The residents downstairs have a few excuses to visit. Since you have already been exposed, boss, you should move to a more private place with better security. I have already contacted a few friends to find out about suitable districts in Yinzhou. Luckily, boss, you haven't graduated from advanced studies, so you don't live here. Nanfeng suggested that it would be best to choose a detached villa to avoid being secretly photographed by the people upstairs and downstairs. For example, after the people downstairs found out that Fang Zhao was staying here, someone had installed a remote control camera the size of a fly to secretly take pictures. They even said they were just taking pictures of the city scenery. Bullshit. There's no rush. Continue asking around, Fang Zhao said. At this stage, this place wasn't suitable for living, but he wasn't in a hurry to find a place. He still had to return to Huangzhou in 2 days to continue his studies. As he was speaking, Nanfeng received a new message. Because Fang Zhao didn't have a manager as an assistant and temporary liaison, he could basically be considered half a manager. If others couldn't contact Fang Zhao, they would contact Nanfeng. Seeing Nanfeng's odd expression, Zuyu asked, "What is it now?" Nanfeng glanced at Fang Zhao and said, "Looking for boss to endorse." "Endorse what?" Zuyu was curious. "Black walks." Nanfeng showed the photo to Fang Zhao, Zuyu, and the others and explained. The photo of Boss's kitchen that was previously leaked was the one where the 2 wanted criminals took out the wok and seasonings and tried to cook 80 million koff, the one where they tried to cook our sea slug. The brand of the black wok has been found. Now, the manufacturer wants Boss to endorse their wok. Endorse? Nanfeng looked at Fang Zhao. No, Fang Zhao replied. As he spoke, Fang Zhao also received a call. Looking at the caller, Fang Zhao smiled and answered. Naz? Long time no see. The caller was the owner of Space, a nightclub in Qian City where people drank and listened to music. He was also one of the world's top 3 speed strumming masters, not a woozy. Naz was a form of address only used by close friends or family members. Later on, Not a Woozy had also let Feng Zhao call him that. I heard you ran into some trouble over there. Come over to have some fun? No need to worry about harassment from entertainment reporters. Not a Woozy said unhurriedly. I remember you saying you were interested in antiques. I also just obtained some old era items. Come over to take a look? After saying so much, Not a Woozy was itching to find someone to play the guitar with. Feng Zhao wanted to avoid the entertainment reporters and was also interested in the old era items that Naughty Woozy had mentioned. Zuiyu, you come with me. Yin Biao and Nanfeng stay at home, Feng Zhao said. Yin Biao had been the one driving the previous time. Now, it was Zuiyu's turn. Boss, I will go too. Zuiyu alone won't be enough. Nanfeng and Yin Biao said at the same time. No need. You guys keep an eye on those two. Feng Zhao pointed at the sea slug that had been locked back in the water tank and glanced at Curly Hair, who was guarding the shelf. Nanfeng and Yin Biao wanted to persuade him but kept quiet. They had no choice. Having met a boss who could fight and run better than them, they felt like they would just be decorations. Persuading Curly Hair made them feel weak. After Feng Zhao and Zuiyu left, Yin Biao sat on the sofa and pondered for a while. He looked at the time and kicked Nanfeng, who was sending a message. He raised his chin and pointed at Curly Hair, who was squatting in front of the shelf. This dog, Curly Hair, has been squatting there ever since he came back. I think he can gaze at the shelf for an entire day. No, it should be this dog's one-sided gaze. Nanfeng glanced over and said nonchalantly, he is helping Boss guard his belongings. Besides the $80 million sea slug, the items on the shelf are the most valuable. All good dogs are like that. They are silent and loyal guards and won't let outsiders steal a single brick or tile from the house. Is that so? Yin Biao didn't believe it. He felt that Curly Hair's eyes were filled with passion when he looked at the shelf. Another hour passed. Curly Hair was still squatting in front of the shelf. He didn't even touch the dog food that Yin Biao had placed beside him. Yin Biao glanced at the shelf and thought about what Nanfeng had said. Then, he observed Curly Hair and smiled silently. This little fella is rather interesting. Look at how he is guarding his belongings. Will he chase you to the ends of the world if you steal one of the items on the shelf? Chapter 435. The first time Feng Zhao had come to space, he had listened to Silver Wing Gaming Department Manager Wayne's suggestion. He had come here to see what his peers were like. At that time, he had not completely adapted to his new identity and did not understand the normal state of being a youngster. He had wanted to learn to be more lively, passionate, and flamboyant. Furthermore, in order to compose music that could be accepted by youngsters of the new era, he had been willing to come into contact with new things and new places. He had also met Not a Woozy at Space. Space was an entertainment venue, and the area above Space was Naughty Woozy's private domain. Unless Not a Woozy invited them, no one could go up. Feng Zhao got Zuiyu to park the car at the place Not a Woozy had mentioned. There was already someone waiting there, and the two of them were escorted upstairs. Naughty Woozy's private domain was quiet most of the time. Naughty Woozy practiced his guitar in a soundproof room, and the corridor was so quiet that it was somewhat solemn. Feng Zhao's arrival broke this solemnity. Teacher Feng, this way please. The boss is already waiting. A bodyguard dressed in black who was waiting in the corridor gestured to Feng Zhao with a smile. Zuiyu glanced at that person and thought to himself, Teacher Feng? The last time he had come, it had been Mr. Feng. This time, it was Teacher Feng? Was the boss's status higher, or had the other party's bootlicking skills improved? As an artist's bodyguard, was it better to be more honest or more quick-witted? Zuiyu discreetly compared himself to this bodyguard who seemed to be doing rather well. He decided to go back and discuss this with Yin Biao and Nanfeng. He wanted to establish a more reliable persona for himself and not lose out. Feng Zhao got Zuiyu to wait outside, while he walked into the room Not a Woozy was in. As one of the 3 speed-strumming masters in the world, Not a Woozy, who was known as Yinzhou's Shadowless Hands, was usually very lonely. The loneliness of an ace. The loneliness of other than me, everyone else is trash. His voice was not very good to begin with, and he did not like to speak. He was a man of few words and spoke slowly. Not a Woozy had no desire to speak to a bunch of ordinary people. Those who didn't understand Naughty Woozy might think that he had been in the realm of gods for too long, and that he hadn't interacted with mortals who didn't understand music and wasn't down to earth. Usually, Naughty Woozy's assistants and bodyguards were already used to being ignored by this boss and used to Naughty Woozy's silence. Today, when Feng Zhao arrived, they heard Naughty Woozy roar with laughter, completely different from his usual reticence. Long time no see. Feng Zhao. Naughty Woozy shoved a guitar into Feng Zhao's hands. Do you still remember how to play? Naughty Woozy was worried that Feng Zhao might be rusty after not touching the guitar for a long time. I remember. Feng Zhao took the guitar and said, during my advanced studies at Huangart, there are also self-study lessons on musical instruments. That's good. Naughty Woozy didn't waste any more time talking nonsense. He started off with Feng Zhao's outburst. The room was closed, cutting off the sound of the guitar. Zuiyu and Naughty Woozy's bodyguards stood guard outside. Of course, they didn't just stand there. When bodyguards met, they would flatter each other and exchange professional experiences. Naughty Woozy's bodyguards also brought tea and snacks. Alcohol was out of the question. Alcohol wasn't allowed during work hours. The bodyguard that Zuiyu had compared Feng Zhao to was currently sitting opposite Zuiyu. He had been promoted to the position of Naughty Woozy's personal bodyguard this year. When Naughty Woozy was out, he and a few other bodyguards would protect Naughty Woozy. This was considered a promotion and a pay raise. Perhaps because he was too curious about Zuiyu's bodyguard, he asked about Zuiyu's usual work. Zuiyu smiled faintly. When boss is out, we accompany him. When boss is home, we also have missions and carry out boss's orders. That bodyguard was stunned. When your boss isn't out, you still have missions. Zuiyu maintained his calm smile. Of course, there were too many missions. For example, feeding pets, walking dogs, attending training classes. These were all things that couldn't be said. The bodyguard sitting opposite Feng Zhao seemed to be imagining something. His eyes flashed with respect and envy. To be entrusted with such an important task by boss, this is the embodiment of a bodyguard's value. Impressive. Cough, you're flattering me. Zuiyu maintained his composure. The two bodyguards chatted, from their business experience to their philosophy of doing things. Then, they began to boast about their boss. Don't be fooled by how slow our boss usually talks, but when he touches the guitar, he's like a hurricane. Two extremes. However, geniuses always have their own personalities. You can't judge a book by its cover. Naughty Woozy's bodyguard had a, I'm so lucky to be able to rub off on boss's genius halo. Zuiyu nodded in agreement. I understand. Just like our boss. He usually looks like a gentle and cultured person, but when he plays games, he turns into a werewolf. Very explosive. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to compose so many epics. Some of them can even be used to treat illnesses. He was an outstanding employee. It couldn't be said that his boss was ruthless. Naughty Woozy's bodyguards didn't think much of it. To Naughty Woozy, Feng Zhao was more of an artist, a literary and artistic worker. Naughty Woozy's bodyguards also viewed Feng Zhao as a cultured youth. The incident of Feng Zhao taking on 6 people at space had long been blurred by the cultured youth filter. Was that a fight? That was disco dancing. Naughty Woozy's bodyguard. Actually, for people like us who work as bodyguards for celebrities, even though our pay is high, sometimes the psychological pressure is really great. Our boss probably doesn't speak as much to us in a month as he did to Feng Zhao today. It feels like we are constantly being despised. Zuiyu maintained his smile. I understand. The pressure of being a salted fish was also great. The two bodyguards shared the pressure of being a bodyguard outside. Inside the room, Feng Zhao and Naughty Woozy strummed the guitar for a while. Naughty Woozy was satisfied and asked Feng Zhao about his recent affairs, whether he needed help, and recommended a few suitable residential areas. Feng Zhao gave a simple explanation and then said, Didn't you say that you obtained a few new old-era objects? Let me take a look. Oh, right, I almost forgot. Naughty Woozy brought Feng Zhao to his collection room. These are all the objects on the shelf. However, the top layer is the real thing, and the bottom layer is the imitation. Imitations can be used directly. Naughty Woozy's father was an archaeologist and loved collecting antiques. Naughty Woozy also had some interest in old-era objects, but he preferred guitars and various old-era instruments. Everything else was secondary. However, overall, he was still a little interested. After obtaining some old-era objects, he would carefully place them on the shelf and get someone to make an imitation of the real thing for him to play with. He couldn't bear to part with the real thing. Furthermore, many old-era objects, even if they had been repaired and reinforced, would still be damaged after 500 years. Besides, even if those objects were perfectly restored, they would still be far from being as sturdy as many of the newer materials from the new era. Naughty Woozy introduced Feng Zhao to the new old-era objects and their uses in the old era. This is a type of mobile phone from the old era. It has been damaged quite badly, and its original appearance can't be seen. Look at the imitation below. This is what it looks like. It is said that this is a rather early type. It is rather large, and in the old era, it was also known as Big Brother. I can't imagine how people carried such a big thing to make a phone call back then. It's too inconvenient. Naughty Woozy was rather pleased to be able to obtain this incomplete brick phone. Although it had been badly damaged, it was impossible to find a second brick phone in the entire world that was in such good condition. It was said that it had been preserved by the help of collectors. Otherwise, after so many years, not even its remains could be found. And this, you definitely won't be able to guess what this is for. Naughty Woozy flaunted his collection. Some were electronic components, but most were musical instrument parts. However, Feng Zhao didn't pay attention to any of these. His attention was focused on a small compartment in the corner of the shelf. There was a small circular insignia. The surface material had already disappeared, and the metal insignia had changed color. There were scratches of varying depths on it, and a few of the protruding words had been destroyed. Feng Zhao's gaze focused on the larger and clearer words on the insignia. Ding Chuan Middle School. This was a school insignia. It was the insignia of a middle school from the old era. The circular insignia was somewhat deformed and had lost its original color. The scratches of varying depths on it told of what had happened to it. Feng Zhao pointed to the school insignia and asked Naughty Woozy, "Can I take a look? You are interested in this?" Naughty Woozy was astonished, but he quickly understood. Feng Zhao was a young man. After all, it was understandable that he would be curious about an old-era school insignia. Naughty Woozy wasn't really interested in the school insignia, but he still had to remind Feng Zhao. "Take a look. The gloves are over there. Control your strength. You have to pay attention to these kinds of small and delicate objects. There is a restored replica on the lower shelf. You can hold it and play with it." Feng Zhao carefully put on the gloves and carefully removed the original school insignia. His fingers caressed the scratched school insignia. "Why interested?" Naughty Woozy was in a good mood today. Seeing that Feng Zhao was interested in this little insignia, he waved his hand. "You can play with it. There is also a restored replica. You can take it and play with it." Feng Zhao retracted his attention from the insignia and said, "Thanks. I will transfer the money. It's a gift to you. This kind isn't worth much. There are too many of these insignia, and it didn't cost much when people transferred them to me." Naughty Woozy wasn't lying. There were still many insignia that had been preserved, even if the schools were different. There were too many school insignia collectibles, and they weren't worth much. The only ones that were valuable were those schools with special historical significance, or the top-ranked schools of the old era. However, those were mostly universities. Secondary school insignia weren't worth much. This school insignia was considered to be one of the better preserved ones, but even so, Naughty Woozy had only sold it for a few tens of thousands. Among the many collectibles, it could be considered a cheap one. A few tens of thousands was really nothing to Naughty Woozy, and he was embarrassed to accept it from Feng Zhao. If it had been someone Naughty Woozy disliked, he would have haggled over a few tens of dollars. However, Naughty Woozy had no intention of accepting this bit of money from Feng Zhao. He just treated it as a small gift for Feng Zhao to play with. Naughty Woozy didn't have a hobby of collecting insignia, so he didn't mind giving it away. Feng Zhao thanked Naughty Woozy once again. He thanked Naughty Woozy for the gift, and he was even more thankful that Naughty Woozy had let him see this school insignia. For collectors, insignia, especially secondary school insignia that didn't have any historical significance, didn't have much value. Only a portion of people who were interested in insignia would collect them. But for Fang Zhao, the significance was different. In the old era, Fang Zhao had attended Ding Chuan Secondary School for his third year of high school. Now, Ding Chuan City was gone, and Ding Chuan Secondary School had disappeared during the period of destruction. Fang Zhao thought he had forgotten what it looked like. Chapter 436. Naughty Woozy spoke too much in his excitement. He only stopped when he felt that his throat was uncomfortable. Fang Zhao played the guitar with Naughty Woozy for a while before letting Naughty Woozy rest first. He then went to the room arranged for him. In Naughty Woozy's territory, there was no need to worry about entertainment reporters. The privacy here was pretty good, and Fang Zhao could have 2 days of peace and quiet. After tidying up a bit, Fang Zhao came out of the shower. Naughty Woozy had sent someone to deliver the badge to him. The small box was divided into 2 layers. The upper layer contained the genuine badge, and the lower layer contained the imitation. After thanking Naughty Woozy, Fang Zhao rejected Naughty Woozy's suggestion to head downstairs for a drink and stayed in his room alone. He put on his gloves and took out the small round badge from the box. Previously, it had been inconvenient. Now that there was no one else, Fang Zhao looked at the little stamp in his hand. The events of the period of destruction took up too much of his memory. Too much time had passed, and the memories of the old era were already very faint. Fang Zhao had once wondered if it was because he had been reborn into this body that he could no longer find many of his memories. However, as the days passed, Fang Zhao discovered that while his memory was improving, many of the memories that he had originally thought he had forgotten also gradually resurfaced. It was just that these all required an opportunity and some catalyst. This was the middle school's emblem. Middle school, that was a long, long time ago. What was it like in middle school? Fang Zhao closed his eyes and tried to search through his memories. As if he had passed through a long time and infinite space, he finally found a piece of memory in the swirl of stars. Some things became clear, and the countless fragments constructed another flesh and blood version of himself. Bang! He was awakened by the sudden noise. In front of her was a desk with some paint peeling off. Her arm was resting on a marked monthly test paper. There was a parent's signature at the corner of the paper, which was rolled up by the wind and laid flat on the desk. Fang Zhao watched all of this in a daze. It feels like I've had a long dream. He raised his head. The sunlight slanted onto the blackboard and the tables and chairs. Some were whispering, some were laughing. Outside the classroom, the figures leaning against the railing gathered together, chatting and enjoying the breeze. Outside, the sky was clear and bright. It seemed that everything was not too late. In the quiet room, Fang Zhao opened his eyes and snapped out of his daze. He raised his hand, and in it was a slightly deformed, worn, and discolored metal school badge. He got up, walked to the window, and pushed it open. What greeted him was the somewhat chilly air and the clear-headed metropolis of the new era. The night passed. He took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. Fang Zhao gazed into the distance, his gaze unfocused. Slowly, the world quieted down. The hustle and bustle of the city were isolated from his ears. Retracting his gaze, Fang Zhao sent a message to Zuoyu and hung a "Do Not Disturb" sign on the door of his room. He sat in front of his desk and took out his notebook and pen. People were very good at forgetting. From the moment they woke up, the things in the dream would gradually fade away in a few minutes. Only by memorizing it would it take root in the brain and not be easily forgotten. Zuoyu, who had received Fang Zhao's message, was already used to Fang Zhao suddenly entering seclusion. As a bodyguard, he had to take responsibility. Thus, Zuoyu hurriedly munched on a piece of hardtack and stood guard in front of Fang Zhao's room door in high spirits. After a while, someone came over. It was someone sent by Naughty Woozy. He had invited Fang Zhao downstairs for breakfast, but he hadn't received a reply from Fang Zhao, so he had sent someone over to take a look. Zuoyu put on a stern and polite face and explained that Fang Zhao was currently composing. If there wasn't anything particularly important, it would be better to wait for Fang Zhao to come out himself. For an artist, a lack of inspiration was tantamount to starting a feud. When the person heard this, he didn't say anything else. He brought over a plate of refreshments and left in a hurry. Downstairs, Nada Woozy was sitting at a square table. Besides him, there were a few other people. He had just sent someone to invite Fang Zhao over for breakfast and to introduce him to a few friends in the music industry. After a while, the person he had sent returned, but Fang Zhao was nowhere to be seen. "Where's Fang Zhao? Still not up?" one person asked. "Many things have happened recently. I reckon he hasn't been sleeping well for the past few days," Nada Woozy replied. The person who had gone upstairs hurriedly replied, "He's up, but the door is closed. His bodyguard says that Fang Zhao's inspiration has come and he is composing, so it isn't convenient to disturb him." Nada Woozy was flabbergasted for a moment before waving his hands to indicate that he understood. "Looks like he has some creative inspiration. Fang Zhao is quite a talented person," the person at the table said with a smile. "He really has the ability," Nada Woozy said. "Hey, Naz, it's rare for Fang Zhao to come to your place. Have you ever thought of inviting Fang Zhao over to your shop to play a song? Didn't you say that Fang Zhao's guitar is pretty good? It just so happens that there's a program tonight. If he can come out today, we can all exchange some pointers," another person said. Nowadays, Space had a special program every Saturday night. Nada Woozy would find friends he knew or invite famous master musicians or orchestras to perform. For this program, the guest performer would put on a mask and perform on a musical instrument. If the singer didn't make a sound, many people wouldn't be able to recognize him. Listeners could only guess who it was based on the style of the song and the performance technique. Most of the people who came to Space to listen to the songs were old customers and had a certain understanding of the music industry. They all loved this game every Saturday night. Every time around this time, they would gather a few friends to drink and listen to the songs. The person who guessed wrongly would have to foot the bill. Today happened to be Saturday, and the few people at the table were invited by Nada Woozy to perform tonight. It was a rock band that had some reputation in Yinzhou. The band leader and guitarist was a friend of Nada Woozy's for many years. Originally, they had come at Nada Woozy's invitation to make a friendly trip, but the band members had never imagined that Fang Zhao would actually be here. Fang Zhao was too famous, not just in Yinzhou, but on a global scale. Not to mention, he had won a Supernova Award and was currently studying in a top-notch advanced course. As people in the same industry, they were both envious and curious. Too curious. They were curious about Fang Zhao as a person and about Fang Zhao's abilities. They had heard Fang Zhao's works. They were indeed impressive. Although his style was different from their band's, they could still distinguish between good and bad works. However, there were too many fakes in the industry, and Fang Zhao was too young. Unless they saw it with their own eyes and heard it with their own ears, even if someone of Mo Lang's caliber acknowledged Fang Zhao's abilities, they would still be skeptical. It wasn't easy to come across this opportunity, but Fang Zhao had gone into seclusion. They didn't even get to see him. Who knew how long his seclusion would last? The band would have performances scheduled for a long time, and Fang Zhao would return to Huangzhou to continue his advanced studies. The chances of bumping into Fang Zhao again were slim. Thus, if they missed this opportunity, they didn't know when the next one would be. I wonder how much Fang Zhao has changed since his advanced studies. Has his style changed? The band leader sitting beside Nada Woozy said. Maybe he's even stronger? The place he studies at is Huangart's 12 Tones. I tried a few times, but I didn't pass. Now that you mention it, I want to see him in person even more. Nada Woozy listened to them but didn't utter a word. Of course, Nada Woozy believed in Fang Zhao's abilities, but Fang Zhao's main focus was composing and not performing. His direction was different. Furthermore, Fang Zhao had encountered a lot of trouble recently. He was being watched by too many people. Whether he was willing to show his face and perform was up to Fang Zhao. If Fang Zhao wasn't willing, it was understandable. After a moment of silence, Nada Woozy said slowly, "I'll ask him when he comes out." If Fang Zhao came out of his room today, Nada Woozy would introduce his band friends to Fang Zhao and ask Fang Zhao if he was willing to play a set at Space. If he was willing to show his face, that would be even better. Fang Zhao's fans were among those who came to Space to drink and listen to his songs. Given Fang Zhao's current reputation, he could bring quite a bit of popularity to the shop. Chapter 437. Feng Zhao didn't leave his room until dinner time. Naughty Woozy didn't know when Feng Zhao would be heading out, so he hadn't waited for him to have dinner. When he saw Feng Zhao, he took the opportunity to introduce his friend's band and ask if Feng Zhao was willing to go on stage and play a song. Feng Zhao thought about it and nodded. Sure. When Naughty Woozy's friend's band saw Feng Zhao agree, they expressed that they were willing to let Feng Zhao go on stage at midnight. Feng Zhao wasn't familiar with Space's Saturday program, so Naughty Woozy patiently explained it to him. After all, Feng Zhao's popularity in Yinzhou was there for all to see. Naughty Woozy said that if Feng Zhao was willing to appear, he wouldn't have to worry about security and would send more people over. He also wouldn't let entertainment reporters harass Feng Zhao. It's still early before midnight. Do you want to practice? Have you decided which song to play? Naughty Woozy asked. Most of Feng Zhao's compositions weren't suitable for guitar performances, so he thought Feng Zhao would choose someone else's. Don't worry, Feng Zhao said. I composed a new song today. It's perfect for playing on the guitar. Naughty Woozy was delighted. Come. I'll practice with you. Is this new composition style different from the previous ones? Oh, you didn't bring your guitar. I'll bring you to pick one. I don't have much here, but I do have a lot of guitars. Let me know which one you like. The band members that had been invited to perform saw Naughty Woozy's excited expression and whispered, Naz is talking a lot today. He's in a good mood today. I'm in a good mood today. Who would have thought that not only would I be able to see Feng Zhao, but I would also be able to listen to Feng Zhao's new composition? But Feng Zhao is a creative talent. It's hard to say how he will perform live without seeing him. Their band's global fame couldn't compare to Feng Zhao's, but in Space and Yinzhou's pop music circles, they still had some backing. In terms of composition and the depth of their works, they couldn't compare, but in terms of performance on Space's stage, they had nothing to fear. Giving up Zero's appearance to Feng Zhao was firstly because of Feng Zhao's current popularity, and they wanted to express their goodwill. Secondly, they wanted to first get a feel for Feng Zhao's ability so that they could better respond. If Feng Zhao's performance wasn't good, they could smooth things over and give this rising star some face. If Feng Zhao performed outstandingly, they would adjust their original plans accordingly so that they wouldn't be suppressed and lose face. Every Saturday night from 10 p.m. to midnight was the time when people in space would let loose. Under the powerful drum beats and high rhythm, the people who came here gradually revealed their crazed and wanton side. Humans in the dark were easily affected by their emotions. All the grievances, sadness, exhaustion, hypocrisy, and the powerlessness that he thought he had concealed well during the day had all drilled out from under his perfectly disguised skin. Of course, there were also people who came here purely to drink, listen to music, chat, and brag. In a certain VIP room, a network anchor started today's live broadcast. He came to Space to live stream every Saturday for the midnight stage. It's a little noisy here. Can everyone hear me? The host controlled the camera and filmed the situation outside the private room. Sure enough, there are a lot of people here on Saturdays. I wonder who's invited for the midnight show today. Minors were not allowed to enter this place. Even for adult college students, the expenses here were on the high side for them. It was fine if they came once or twice, but if they came every week, it would be financially stressful. Besides, even if they came in, they wouldn't be able to afford a good seat. Not to mention a private room like this. 1 hour could cost them a month's worth of living expenses. In comparison, watching a live broadcast was more worth it. Anchors were different. They had a bit of money and could reserve a good seat every time. They had their own private room, which made it convenient for live broadcasts and for interacting with the audience. Those who couldn't bear to watch the live broadcast could watch his Saturday live broadcast. As a music host who had made a name for himself in the live broadcast world, he used professional live broadcast equipment. Even if the surroundings were noisy, it wouldn't affect his interaction with the fans during the live broadcast. In a certain SVIP room, 7 or 8 people were gathered here. I'm not bragging, but I've been a regular customer here for more than 20 years. The number of people who have been invited to perform over the years is uncountable. Those who aren't famous are fine, but for those who are famous, even if I close my eyes, I can guess 8 out of 10 times who's performing on stage. Even a mask can't hide my discerning eyes. You? You're still showing off in front of me? You've only been listening here for more than 20 years. Not only have I been here for 20 years, I've also been watching music variety shows for 40 years. I'm very familiar with all the new and old singers and performers who have a little bit of fame. Bullshit. If you don't believe me, let's have a competition. Let's have a competition. Let's see who can guess it first. If you lose, you have to lend me your new flying transport for 3 months. Heh, afraid of you? If you lose, I don't want your flying transport. You just have to lend me Tizansia's private cruise for 3 months. Sure. Hey Ron, do you want to join? The people in the private room turned to look at the person smoking on the sofa. Ron Zach was the same age as Naughty Woozy. He was a regular customer of Space and an old classmate of Naughty Woozy's. On the stage in front that had been cleared, a staff member brought up a rather well-designed stool. But no matter how well-designed it was still just a stool. Everyone waited to see what else would be brought up, whether there were any percussion instruments, but after a while, there was still only a stool on stage. Today's props are a little dull. Everyone looked at the stage expectantly as they counted the time. When the time reached midnight, a person holding a guitar walked up to the stage in front. When they looked again, it was still just one person. The venue was abuzz with discussion. Just one person? Didn't that person say he had insider information that it was a band that was invited tonight? I was wondering if it was the band I liked. I bought 2 more hours tonight just to wait for this. Many people had arrived long ago and waited for a few hours just to see who was invited tonight. This dance doesn't look like a band. Scam. Wrong information. Regardless of whether they had been scammed or not, at this time, everyone was also looking at the stage curiously. The person on stage was dressed in casual attire with a hood and mask. The mask covered his face so tightly that even his eyes could not be seen. The other party could see them through the mask, but they could not see the other party through the mask. The eyes below the stage looked from the person's figure, posture, skin color, and hair to the shoes and accessories. Not a single detail was missed, but there was still no useful information. No tattoos, no necklace, no rings, no earrings, and the shoes are not limited edition. Who is this? Although my taste in fashion is not good enough, I can still see that this person has no sense of fashion. And from what I can see, either his hair is too short or he did not do any styling. I can see that. His dressing is not special, and his every movement is not imposing. He is most likely a has-been. In many people's opinion, the person on stage now did not have enough personality. Many public figures with enough fame and attention online, especially those in the arts and entertainment circles, had very stylish hair when they appeared in front of the public. This was also the perception of many people outside the circle. But now, they scanned the person several times like a scanner and could not see anything special. If the other party had not appeared on stage, they would not have paid any attention to him even if he had been thrown into the crowd. Inside the SVIP room, the people who were waiting to guess had no clue at the moment. Can't tell. Let me analyze his technique and musical style in a while. At first glance, there is nothing special. Luckily, he is still calm and does not seem nervous. Ron Zach, the Golden Ears, who had received the stamp of approval from the Yinzhou Music and Artists Association, had a flash of interest in his eyes. Interesting. This time, Naughty Woozy had given everyone a difficult problem. Given Naughty Woozy's style of doing things, he would not invite a nobody. Could it be a big shot that had been out of the circle for a long time? Who could it be? Seeing that the person on stage was about to start, Ron became more serious. Finger flicking? Not playing or singing. On stage, the masked midnight stage performer's aura seemed to suddenly change the moment he sat down. From an ordinary person, he became a solid statue. Quiet, yet powerful. He did not say a word, just expressing his emotions. The venue quieted down. A mysterious prelude was clearly transmitted to every corner of the venue through the top-notch sound system. The melody had a light, warm tone to it. Hidden within it were some light and heavy sighs. The heart floated along with it, and the mind went blank for a moment. Unconsciously, one went from being an independent spectator to being part of it. In the haze, one seemed to see a tree growing by the lake. Standing under the tree, One looked down and saw one's puzzled expression in the reflection of the lake surface. It seemed like one had forgotten something. Was it a dream or an ideal? It was too far away and untraceable. Time passed. The trees were silent. Leaves fell to the ground one by one, picked up by the wind and blown far away. Following those leaves, all the way, going around and around, walking alone, over and over again, regaining what was lost. Warm sun and gentle wind, passing through the blue dome of heaven, chatting and laughing amidst the prosperity, pausing in solitude. Time, distance, time, nostalgia. A leaf floated towards a distant galaxy, and the colorful particles suddenly changed. When one stood still and looked back, it was as if he saw the big tree by the lake a long time ago, with its luxuriant branches and leaves, and the person under the tree, smiling. Ron closed his eyes and listened carefully to the strange feeling brought by the music. He had never heard it before, but there was always a sense of familiarity, as if he could hum it the next second, as if it had been engraved in his soul. The world was quiet. The cigarette between his fingers was still emitting smoke, but at this moment, it seemed to have been forgotten. The air around him suddenly became clear, and only the melody could be heard. His fingers without the cigarette tapped the table rhythmically and silently. The corners of his mouth raised into a faint smile. His eyes were slightly wet, simple and melodious, touching one's heart. Relying on the music, returning to the thoughts, calming the body and mind, and settling the soul. The strings seemed to have a life of their own. Every note appeared at just the right time, making one's thoughts run wild. But in the end, it was clear, as if a long time had passed, leaving behind some clarity and understanding. The words were spoken, but not spoken. Understanding, peace. Ron could no longer remember why he was here. He was just glad that he could listen to such a performance. It was so moving, simple and pure, like a simple story heard on a clear day that seemed to have been forgotten for a long time. This piece wasn't long, less than 4 minutes, but it gave people a feeling of crossing a distant time and space. They didn't even have time to study the other party's playing techniques, and they didn't have time to analyze the other party's style of music before their thoughts were carried away. At the end of the song, Ron, who was brought back to his senses by the sudden burst of applause and whistles in the venue, let out a long sigh. The outside is like the world. The inside is free, a real work of art. After listening in space for so many years, there were very few people who could be praised as works of art by Ron Zach on the spot. The other people in the private room were also shocked by Ron's evaluation, but at the same time, their faces were full of distress. They hadn't even guessed who it was after hearing it. They looked at each other. Oh ho, everyone was the same. Ron, can you tell who it is? Someone asked. Ron didn't speak, staring at the person on the stage, his eyes burning. He couldn't tell. But to be able to perform to such an extent, it had to be the other party's own work. And to be able to perform with such expressive power, to bring such soul-shaking resonance, such a strong ability, it couldn't be a nobody. Could it really be a big shot that had retired from the industry many years ago? Under the watchful eyes of the audience, the person on the stage got up, bowed to everyone, and nimbly pulled back his hood and took off his mask. The moment the mask was removed, the audience went crazy. People who were jumping and waving to the stage almost sprained their waists. Feng Zhao, fuck. It's Feng Zhao. Quick, hit me. Did I drink too much and have hallucinations? I actually saw Feng Zhao here, aw. The drunk person on the sofa in the private room opened his eyes in a daze and smacked his lips. I actually dreamed that someone was calling Feng Zhao. There was another round of shouting that sounded like it was going to tear open the ceiling. Recently, the news had blown up, and coupled with Feng Zhao's accumulated popularity, most people in the Yenzhou area knew Feng Zhao. Unless they were face-blind, they wouldn't mistake that face. Ron was so shocked that he dropped his cigarette. His eyes widened as if his worldview had collapsed. He swallowed his saliva and searched for Feng Zhao's photo in disbelief. Then he looked at the person on the stage with the guitar. He couldn't lie to himself anymore. It was actually Feng Zhao. Why is it Feng Zhao? He had also studied Feng Zhao's works, and there was no such simple lyricism. Furthermore, this kind of expressive ability couldn't be achieved without at least a few decades' worth of practice. But he swore on his golden ears that the performance just now wasn't fake. Chapter 438. Although the customer service team and maintenance engineers were a little moody, traffic meant wages, and overtime meant pay. Thinking about overtime pay made everyone happy again. It was a mixture of pain and happiness. They were happy to see these celebrities cause trouble, but why did they like to cause trouble in the middle of the night? What kind of weird habit was that? Inside space, Feng Zhao played a tune, gave his thanks, and left quickly. This wasn't his special performance. He had to leave the stage for the band that had been invited. However, the band was under immense pressure. They felt like they had shot themselves in the foot. They hadn't had a clear idea of Feng Zhao's ability before his studies, and they didn't know what his standard was after his studies. Now, they knew. I knew he was strong, but I didn't expect him to be this strong. The kind of strength that can only be felt up close. We can only execute Plan B. Plan B, they had already thought it through. If Feng Zhao's performance wasn't satisfactory, they would execute Plan B. Plan A, restrain yourself during the performance and save Feng Zhao some face. But if Feng Zhao was too impressive, they would execute Plan B. Plan B, save their own face. Clearly, they could only execute Plan B. Let's just talk to him privately in the future. When is Feng Zhao's graduation concert? Where is it held? Let's get a few tickets and go listen. Their graduation concert might not be fully publicized. The band members were quite capable. Coupled with the pressure Feng Zhao had exerted from the front, the few of them gave it their all and performed exceedingly well. The atmosphere in the venue was heated up, but Feng Zhao's influence did not fade. Nadiwuzi couldn't be bothered with anything else. He had promised to ensure Feng Zhao's safety and that he would fend off entertainment reporters and other disturbances, and he had done that. After arranging for a portion of his client's autographs, he got someone to bring Feng Zhao upstairs to rest. After all, Feng Zhao had been in seclusion for over 10 hours and hadn't had time to rest for the midnight performance. He should be tired by now. Have a good sleep. Don't worry about things here. I won't let anyone disturb you. After sending Feng Zhao upstairs, Nadiwuzi rushed off to handle some matters. Tonight was destined to not be a peaceful night. He had only been upstairs for a short while, but he had already received a number of calls. Many people were envious of Feng Zhao's commercial value. Some of Nadiwuzi's business partners and friends were also trying to find out more about him. A music variety show that Nadiwuzi was collaborating with also approached Nadiwuzi to ask if they could rope Feng Zhao into their variety show. Appearance fees could be negotiated. Nadiwuzi had asked Feng Zhao about this, but Feng Zhao had rejected him. Feng Zhao was still in advanced studies and didn't want to be distracted by participating in too many commercial activities or variety shows. Of course, Nadiwuzi understood that Feng Zhao was only returning a favor today. Otherwise, Feng Zhao wouldn't have shown up at this time. Did Feng Zhao lack that bit of traffic and topics? Zhuyu had no intention of sleeping tonight. He had glanced down the street from the window. There were quite a number of entertainment reporters squatting outside. He had no idea how many people had snuck in from the space store. He had to ensure Feng Zhao's safety. After all, the people Nadiwuzi had sent were outsiders. As the official bodyguard, he could not fall behind. As he stood guard at the door, Zhuyu browsed through the news online. Sure enough, the moment he browsed, all he saw were hot topics related to Feng Zhao. Hashtag Feng Zhao nightclub finger-flicking, hashtag Feng Zhao's godly tune, hashtag the true artist, hashtag. There was also a clip of Feng Zhao's performance taken from the live broadcast, as well as videos taken from various angles by people in the venue. These caused a new wave of arguments. I just watched the video edited by a certain host. All I can say is that it's alright. I don't think much of it. Adjust the effects device for me. I can play it too. Me plus effects device equals Feng Zhao. Looking at it this way, the difference isn't that big. I'm not boasting or slandering, but when it comes to playing skills, not just in Yenzhou, even in our school, there are at least 10 people who don't lose to Feng Zhao. As someone who was listening to the entire performance live, I watched as you guys pretended to be awesome. Those who weren't there found it hard to imagine the feeling of losing control of the brain. It was as if the whole person was being carried away. Perhaps this is the difference. I finally understand why so many people prefer to listen to live performances. Only up close can you truly feel that kind of powerful performance. Fang Zhao's current heights are really not fake flattery. There are already people who have uploaded their playing versions. After listening to so many versions, there are many amazing people. Undeniably, these are all played very well. There are also people who have made slight adjustments to increase the difficulty of the technique, but it is still different. After listening to it live, you will realize that when Fang Zhao performs, there is a very peculiar appeal that cannot be replicated. I'm really not exaggerating. Indeed, the tempo looks stable, but the artistic conception is very difficult to express. So, the one in front, stop blindly boasting. Even with the effects device, you can't play it out. Is technique as simple as you guys say? I tried it. The overtones are very difficult, and the timing is hard to grasp. I can't play it smoothly, let alone the artistic conception. In terms of technique, Fang Zhao still has a foundation. What's important is that kind of expressive ability that cannot be replicated. The way of music is really mystical. It's a pity I didn't get to experience it live. That's right. Zhao God isn't like some people who only know how to flaunt their skills on stage and can't express their inner qualities. Hey, just talk about Fang Zhao. Don't trample on others. We can't compare like that. Styles are different, and artistic expression is also different. Some people focus on the meaning, some on the form, some on the melody, some on the rhythm. Let's not talk about technique or artistic conception first. I just want to ask what the song Fang Zhao played is called. I just used song recognition and couldn't recognize it. The internet was in a mess. Outside space, the reporters who had rushed over in succession blocked off the customers who were coming out. Ron wasn't the only one who had a deep impression of Fang Zhao's song. It was very difficult to extricate oneself after one's emotions were brought in. So a portion of the people left space after Fang Zhao left the stage. Reporters from Qi and Morning Post happened to be in the vicinity for an interview. When they received the news, they also rushed over. However, they didn't enter space. Instead, they waited outside to pick a target. This was a good opportunity. They couldn't let go of a hot topic like Fang Zhao. If they couldn't stop Fang Zhao, they could also interview other people. They could sort it out and use it for the morning report. Seeing a few people walk out of the shop with their arms around each other's shoulders, the reporters rushed over. It was obvious that these people had too much to drink. It was good to be drunk. When drunk, one could speak without restraint and say whatever was on one's mind. The reporters went over to probe and found out that these people were here to attend a small gathering. They had graduated 30 years ago. Recently, there had been a chance that a few classmates from high school had come to this small gathering. Do you listen to Fang Zhao's works too? The reporter asked. The drunkard who was questioned sniffled. Of course, but I've heard too much of his sleep your ass off and get high style. When I suddenly hear him express his emotions, it's simply, haha. The reporter's eyes lit up. It's killing me. The drunkard started howling again. He was drunk, and his brain was a little out of control. He didn't know why, but he just wanted to cry. It was as if some long-suppressed emotions had finally been drawn out and couldn't be held back. 4 or 5 burly men suddenly got agitated. As if they had thought of something, they hugged each other and wailed loudly. Snot and tears smeared their faces. The scene was extremely unbearable. The reporters silently made way for them. They were a proper news agency and had to report properly. Yesterday, the higher-ups had told them to correct their attitude and not to make things up. They shouldn't be like those entertainment reporters who exaggerated reports to attract attention. Although they had seized the opportunity to interview on the streets today, they still had to treat it seriously. Clearly, the other party's description of the interview had been overly exaggerated, indecent, and unrealistic. It didn't match the temperament of Qi and Morning Post at all. It was better to get someone sober. There were so many people coming out from space. Why was there a need to stare at these unsightly people? Scanning the people coming out from space, the reporter picked one person. This person looked very sober. He wasn't drunk and seemed rather happy. He had a smile on his face and would definitely cooperate with the interview. The reporter was confident and quickly went over to stop the person. "Did you listen to Fang Zhao's performance just now?" the reporter asked. "I did. Did you like it?" "I liked it." "Then, in your opinion, what standard do you think of Fang Zhao's work?" "What standard?" That person's face was filled with doubt. "Yes, exactly. In your opinion, what grade is Fang Zhao's work?" That person thought about it seriously. "Air purifier grade." Reporter. That person raised his hand and patted his chest. Ah, the feeling of all the haze being removed. Reporter. This was definitely a die-hard fan of Fang Zhao's. Die-hard fans wouldn't do. It didn't match the neutral nature of Qi and Morning Post. That person didn't care about what the reporter was thinking. He maintained a face full of emotion and smiled. Pushing aside the entertainment reporters in front of him, he hummed a tune as he walked over to a taxi. After a gust of cold wind, the reporter's assistant asked meekly, "Are we still going to continue with the interview?" "Yes." The reporter's picky gaze swept back and forth. Very quickly, he chose a person who seemed steady and calm. He looked very neutral at a glance. The reporter went over to ask that person for his evaluation of Fang Zhao's performance that night. That person didn't reject the interview and answered rather seriously. "Evaluation? It's a very good piece of work. There's sorrow and beauty in it. Listening to it makes me feel rich. I saw someone crying. Did you feel sad after hearing it?" "Not sad." "Melancholy?" "Not melancholy." "Happy?" "Not happy either." The reporter looked at that expressionless face. "How are you feeling rich? What about you?" The reporter refused to give up. "You don't understand." The other party maintained an inscrutable and cold expression. The reporter. The sublimation of one's state of mind. After listening to it, I feel like I'm atoning for my sins when I write my thesis. The reporter. Poison. Fang Zhao had no idea what people outside thought of him. After he entered his room, he received a call from Immerse. It was already morning in Huangzhou. When Immerse woke up, his assistant informed him of Fang Zhao's situation in Yenzhou. He had originally thought that Fang Zhao had returned to Yenzhou to cooperate with the investigation. He had never imagined that Fang Zhao would stir up so much trouble. The old master was so worried that he hurriedly made a call to inquire. Sigh. Fang Zhao was indeed the most worry-free when he was locked up on Whale Island. When Fang Zhao received the call, he explained the situation to Immerse. Immerse let out a satisfied smile and continued, "Once you are done with the matters in Yenzhou, hurry back. You are still in advanced studies, so don't keep applying for leave. Forget about this friend's invitation. It's best if you don't participate in those commercial and entertainment activities outside. You still have the Fiery Bird endorsement deal, so you don't have to worry about money. There's no rush to endorse other things." "MMHM, got it," Fang Zhao replied. "That's good. That piece you played was a new piece?" "It was really not bad, but it's not suitable for a graduation concert." Immerse analyzed the pros and cons for Fang Zhao. Academics had their own grading standards, and graduation concert pieces had their own evaluation criteria. He was worried that Fang Zhao would be easily cheated because of his young age, so he emphasized a few things that needed to be taken note of. Seeing that Fang Zhao's attitude was sincere and not perfunctory, Immerse was extremely gratified and didn't say anything else. However, before he hung up, he thought of something and asked, "Oh right, what was the name of the song you played?" "Time travel. The old era, the period of destruction, the new era." Inconceivable amounts of time had passed. Fang Zhao had thought that he had forgotten about things from even longer ago, but this school emblem made him recall many things. Ants on the ground, stardust in the sky, countless grains of sand in the Ganges River. He was in a one-way passageway, and he could only move forward. However, memories were there, and they would occasionally open the door to the past, allowing him to see those memories from even longer ago, to see the secrets of the passage of time. For example, he had thought that he only remembered the ruins of the period of destruction, but he had never imagined that he would still be able to clearly remember the luxuriant and leafy parasol trees outside the classroom, shading the path with a pleasant breeze. Fang Zhao glanced at the school emblem in his collection box. After tidying up a little, he didn't go to sleep. MMHM. His condition wasn't bad. Suitable for revising. After hanging up a seclusion sign on the door, Fang Zhao spread open the notebook that contained his graduation concert piece and started to revise the score. Nada Woozy, who had finally finished busying himself, fell silent as he looked at the seclusion sign on the door. Is inspiration that easy to come by? Is it a difference in talent, or am I really getting old? Chapter 439. Naughty Woozy did not sleep well that night. He had left the matters of his store to his subordinates, but he still received calls every now and then, and most of them were calls that he could not refuse. This was also the first time Nada Woozy had experienced Fang Zhao's influence in Yenzhou. Now, Fang Zhao was truly a celebrity with real ability and not just a bubble. Naughty Woozy believed that Fang Zhao's commercial value would continue to rise. After all, Fang Zhao had the ability, luck, and youth. It's great to be young. Naughty Woozy sighed wearily and helplessly. He felt that there was not much difference between his talent and Fang Zhao's. Indeed, he was getting older. His mind was not as nimble as when he was younger, and his spirit could not keep up. However, when he thought about how many people in Yenzhou would not be able to sleep over the next 2 days, Nada Woozy laughed. Fang Zhao's performance in the middle of the night had stolen the limelight for too many people. Many people in the industry were rubbing their fists and gnashing their teeth. Why is this fellow still here? When is he going back to school? In fact, Fang Zhao really did not stay in Yenzhou for long. He had returned this time to cooperate with the investigation. Although the investigation had not yielded any useful information, he was not in a hurry to look for a place to live in the near future. After staying at Naughty Woozy's place for 2 days, he rejected invitations from various parties and returned to Huangzhou to continue his studies. However, even though Fang Zhao had left Yenzhou, the number of people coming to space had increased. Everyone was thinking, Fang Zhao might not be here, but who knows, there might be other surprises. Thus, for a long time to come, space would be full every Saturday night. Unless you made a reservation, you would not be able to get in. There were too many people, and there was a limit on the number of people inside. Naughty Woozy was famous, but that was only in his small circle. Only a small portion of people in Yenzhou still knew of him. This time, Fang Zhao had performed at Nada Woozy's nightclub, and Space's name had become known by even more people. It had become a new generation of internet influencers. There were also some bands, singers, and performing artists who took the initiative to contact Nada Woozy, expressing their willingness to perform at Space. Nada Woozy himself had not expected that giving away a badge that did not have much collectible value would bring him such great benefits. In another part of Yenzhou, in a seaside villa, someone was watching the video of Fang Zhao's performance at Space over and over again. What a surprise. I didn't expect him to be such an all-round talent. The person who had spoken had a unique voice. He was also a singer who had exploded in Yenzhou, but he had not had any outstanding works in the past 2 years, so his popularity had faded a little. Beside him, his agent was also watching the video attentively. We can pay close attention to this Fang Zhao. I've studied all of his works. This person has an extremely frightening learning ability. Before he went to Huangart's 12 tones for advanced studies, I could still roughly see the direction he would develop in, but now, I can no longer see it clearly. After a year of training, he has mastered too many elements, and his musical style is ever-changing. You can't guess what style he will unlock tomorrow. So, what is your suggestion? Let's go take a look at Fang Zhao's graduation concert. If there are any suitable songs, we can buy them and adapt them for you to sing. Who knows, you might be able to make a comeback. At the same time, on a certain resort island, an old man was sitting on a deck chair, talking to a good friend. Have you seen the video I sent you? The other side asked. I saw it. This kid Fang Zhao is impressive. How about it? Are you interested? How about we go to this kid's graduation concert? Sure, we can also take a look at old Imo. I haven't seen him in a few years. I wonder if that bad temper of his has changed. Then remember, don't throw the invitation letter 12 tones sent you into the trash. Got it, got it. After ending the call, The old man clicked on the video of Fang Zhao's performance that his good friend had sent him and clicked his tongue in wonder. Kids these days are already this impressive? Similar conversations were taking place in many places on every continent. Fang Zhao didn't know that his graduation concert was being remembered by even more people. After returning to Huangzhou, he quickly returned to his previous state of advanced studies. He attended lectures, learned new knowledge, revised his thesis, revised scores, and prepared for his thesis defense. Besides these, Fang Zhao also paid considerable attention to curly hair. As curly hair had yet to learn how to control his vocalizations, Fang Zhao reduced the number of times curly hair went out. Even when he went out for a walk, curly hair didn't make a sound or bark. He was afraid that if he got excited, he wouldn't be able to control himself and say a few words. How scary would that be? He might even be locked up in a laboratory. When Nanfeng, who didn't know the truth, noticed curly hair's change, he even joked. It's said that dogs that bite don't bark. He doesn't bark much now. Is he starting to like biting people? In the dormitory, Fang Zhao also taught curly hair how to speak every day. He had downloaded tutorials for young children for curly hair to practice, but he hadn't made much progress. As time went on, curly hair started to resist speaking lessons. His initial enthusiasm had long since disappeared. Thus, Fang Zhao pondered whether this little thing needed a little stimulation. Hadn't curly hair opened his mouth in a moment of anxiety because his gaming helmet had been stolen? These 2 days, there was a smartphone exhibition on Huangart's campus aimed at ordinary families and students. There were personal terminals, game consoles, household robots, and so on. Fang Zhao went straight over after listening to the lecture. At this time, there were still many students in class, so the exhibition hall was rather deserted. After surveying his surroundings, Fang Zhao looked at the game console display. There was a teacher who had brought a child over and wanted to buy a present for the child. Yep, a birthday present, a learning console. Even the simplest games had the flavor of a test. The teacher wanted to buy a learning console next to the game console display, but the child hugged the console display and didn't let go, looking like he was about to throw a tantrum. At this moment, the child was crying and yelling at his parent, "Are you a demon?" Clinging to the game console display, the child turned his head and didn't look at the learning console display next door. He didn't move his feet either, clinging to his final stubbornness. Just as he was preparing his emotions with reddened eyes, the child heard his mother shout, "Quick! The little snowman ice cream next door is almost sold out." Child. His final stubbornness couldn't withstand a single blow. Fang Zhao watched as the child was tricked by his mother into buying an ice cream and a learning console. Then, the child left, looking back every few steps. Fang Zhao raised his leg. The person in charge of the game console display saw Fang Zhao and took 2 steps forward to say something. But then, he saw Fang Zhao walk past their display. Fang Zhao stood in front of the learning console display and looked at all kinds of learning consoles. There were helmet-type learning consoles that didn't look much different from gaming helmets, just slightly smaller. There were all kinds of models. The person in charge of the display recognized Fang Zhao and was extremely puzzled when he saw Fang Zhao come over to look at the learning console. He hadn't heard that Fang Zhao was married. Could it be a secret marriage? Or was he just buying gifts for his relatives or friends' children? He had all sorts of guesses in his mind, but he maintained a warm smile on his face as he asked Fang Zhao what he needed. After all, he was in charge of Huangart's exhibition. Even if he knew any secrets, he wouldn't divulge them. Huangart didn't have much else, but it had plenty of celebrities. Fang Zhao asked about the usage and functions of a few models of helmet-type learning consoles, and the person in charge patiently answered them. Fang Zhao didn't buy anything when he left. As the questions were more detailed, Fang Zhao had intended to pay the consultation fee, but the person in charge didn't accept it. Instead, he asked Fang Zhao to sign a learning console that he had planned to give to his niece. The person in charge thanked Fang Zhao once again after receiving his signature. "Thank you, Zhao God. Our whole family likes you very much." The person in charge carefully placed the sign learning console into the gift box. He thought to himself, with this signature, my niece won't secretly throw the learning console away, right? When Fang Zhao returned to his dormitory, Curly Hair was staring at a voice tutorial and practicing his vocalizations. He was whimpering and had yet to learn how to control his vocalizations. Feng Zhao knew with a glance that this dog had definitely been sleeping before he had returned. He had only pretended to be practicing seriously when he heard the commotion. Curly Hair looked like he was staring at the screen, but his little eyes would glance over from time to time. Feng Zhao was silent for a while before waving his hand. Curly Hair immediately wagged his tail and rolled over to act spoiled. He even used his paws to tug at Feng Zhao's trousers. Curly Hair. Feng Zhao crouched down and patted Curly Hair's head. When you can control your vocalizations, learn to speak, and can switch between human speech and dog barking, I will give you a custom-made helmet with internet access. Upon hearing this, Curly Hair's ears perked up with a whoosh. Custom-made helmet? Internet access? He was so excited that he couldn't breathe. Curly Hair looked at Feng Zhao with bright eyes. Under Curly Hair's watchful gaze, Feng Zhao nodded. I'll do what I say. When you have learned those things and met the requirements, I will buy you a custom-made helmet with internet access. Given your ability, it won't be difficult for you to learn those things. Curly Hair's eyes seemed to burn with fire after receiving confirmation. For the sake of his custom-made helmet and the excitement of finally being able to go online, Curly Hair worked hard. It was as if he had found the meaning of a dog's life. Feng Zhao revealed a benevolent smile as he watched the hard-working Curly Hair. Heh, gamer dog. Chapter 440. For the sake of a dog's first helmet, Curly Hair had put in a lot of effort to change it. Feng Zhao's dormitory now had a small cabinet with a few gaming helmets on it. Curly Hair used it to recharge his batteries. Every time he felt annoyed and didn't want to learn, he would stare at Feng Zhao's cabinet. Then, he would be motivated again. After his house in Yenzhou had been burglarized, Feng Zhao had moved a portion of his belongings. He had brought the rabbit and gaming helmet back to his dormitory. This was strongly requested by Nanfeng. Nanfeng wouldn't feel at ease if he didn't see it with his own eyes, so he came over every day to take a look. As for the other things in the house, great-grandfather Feng suggested that they be placed in the retirement facility, especially Feng Zhao's medals and trophies. Great-grandfather Feng would definitely help Feng Zhao guard them. Therefore, after Feng Zhao finished packing, he got Yin Biao to send the items over. With the stimulation of rewards, Curly Hair's progress was gratifying. From the vague pronunciation at the beginning, to being able to understand what it was saying, to being able to enunciate the words accurately, all these changes were completed within a week. His ability to control his voice had improved by leaps and bounds. All that was left was to adapt, as well as to be able to freely and accurately switch between languages. He could speak human language when it was time to speak, bark when it was time to bark, and not make the wrong sound at the wrong time. Originally, it didn't have much enthusiasm for talking. At least, it wasn't enough to motivate it to try its best to change. Now, Feng Zhao had merely placed a bait in front of it, and the dog had become proactive. Look at how much it had changed in the past few days. This made Feng Zhao ponder a lot. He even guessed that Curly Hair's changes had a lot to do with Curly Hair's wishes. Or could it be that the change was slow to begin with, and the strong will sped up the change? Whale Island cannibalism, for example. Another example would be talking now. Even now, Feng Zhao still did not know how it had eaten an adult without leaving a trace, but Feng Zhao did not doubt the authenticity of this matter. Every time Feng Zhao asked, Curly Hair would not be able to explain the process. The answer he gave was very simple. Open your mouth, swallow, and eat if you want to. This was an unknown species that required proper guidance and a certain degree of control. Today, when Feng Zhao returned from class, he heard Curly Hair practicing vocalizations. It wasn't the perfunctory kind from before. Those dog eyes were completely serious. Chicken leg, gophers, beef. Complete the pronunciation of the words for today, and then read a short passage with emotion. Curly Hair couldn't wait to show Feng Zhao his results when he saw the A+ score. Feng Zhao, I've gotten an A+ 4-5 days in a row. Yesterday and the day before yesterday, he also performed well when he went out for a walk. There were no language switching errors. Can I get the helmet now? Curly Hair's eyes widened in anticipation. Feng Zhao looked at its results for the day and nodded. It's settled. Now, Curly Hair's speech wasn't particularly smooth, and his vocabulary wasn't large either. Fortunately, he wasn't as stiff as he had been at the beginning. The high-frequency mechanical sounds and the high-speed whizzing of the motor were also completely gone. Indeed, they could proceed to the next stage. Feng Zhao opened up the online ordering page for the learning machine. He had already asked the person in charge of the exhibition counter, and the ordering page had been saved. Now that Curly Hair had fulfilled the initial requirements, Feng Zhao opened up the customization page in front of Curly Hair. After choosing the model, there was a free design module on the customization page. There were many choices, and the customer could choose the colors and patterns according to their preferences. Take a look yourself. What colors and patterns do you like? What words do you want to carve? Curly Hair wagged his tail and went over. This was the first helmet in its entire life. Curly Hair even referenced the few gaming helmets in Feng Zhao's collection cabinet for the patterns. Together with his paw prints and teeth marks, he engraved the 2 words Curly Hair. After Curly Hair was done, Feng Zhao submitted it for a preliminary review. After passing, it was shown that he could manufacture it. After payment was made, all that was left was to receive the goods. There was a queue for the customization, and it was 2 days later. Feng Zhao retrieved the package and brought it back to his dormitory. Curly Hair was already waiting by the door. When Feng Zhao opened the package, the words on the box were revealed. Curly Hair, dumbfounded dog face. Learning machine? What's a learning machine? Why isn't it a gaming console? There isn't even a fiery bird logo. He suddenly had an ominous premonition. Why does it look like a gaming console? Curly Hair tilted his head as he read the product name on the box. His eyes were filled with doubt. Feng Zhao's expression didn't change. They are cousins. Gaming consoles aren't the only things that look like helmets. There is also a learning machine. We have to proceed step by step. Feng Zhao told Curly Hair, learning machine, gaming console, intelligent terminal. This is a process of usage. At this stage, you will first use the learning machine. As for when you can enter the second stage and use the gaming console, that will depend on your performance. Although this learning machine was different from what Curly Hair had expected, the gaming console and intelligent terminal that Feng Zhao had mentioned were too attractive. It was as if there was a huge meaty bone in front of him. Curly Hair had to chew on the smaller bone in front of him before he could chew on the bigger bone in front of him. As for now, a learning machine was a learning machine. Can you play games? Curly Hair asked. Yes, Feng Zhao replied. Can you connect to the internet? Yes. Curly Hair was delighted again. He circled around the box and urged Feng Zhao to hurry up and open it. He was going to see the first helmet that belonged to him in his entire life. Even if this was just a gaming console's cousin, he wouldn't despise it. For a dog that had just been allowed to access the internet, even a learning machine was enough to make him excited. When the learning machine with Curly Hair's teeth marks, paw prints, and name came out of the box, Curly Hair stuck onto it. Just like Feng Zhao's other gaming helmets, Curly Hair started using his own method of binding. Back then, Curly Hair knew that those gaming helmets had been stolen because he hadn't bound the gaming helmets to the gaming consoles but to the collection shelves. That was how he knew the movements of the items in the collection shelves. The process was still a little hazy. Staring. Seems like I can bind. Binding successful. Now, Curly Hair was already a formidable dog and knew how to bind his own helmet. After binding, Curly Hair's journey with the learning machine began. Feng Zhao let Curly Hair use the learning machine to learn more words. The learning machine provided a certain degree of freedom in searching. That's right, it was a certain degree. After all, it was still a learning machine. Even if it was connected to the internet, there were age restrictions. After parents set up restrictions, content above that age wouldn't be able to view. In short, it was still within the scope of minors. After Curly Hair put on the learning machine and entered learning mode, he searched for words related to dogs in the search box and read along. Making sounds was a daily practice that Feng Zhao had stipulated. It was different from the previous fixed curriculum. Now that he had the learning machine, he had a greater degree of freedom. Curly Hair read along as he looked at the displayed words. A dog relying on its master's power. A dog has the guts to jump over the wall. A dog's leg. Feng Zhao watched from the side for a while before settling his own matters. However, he was constantly paying attention to Curly Hair's situation. Buying the learning machine was also a form of restraint. Feng Zhao had to keep a close eye on an unknown creature like Curly Hair to prevent him from going astray and letting himself loose. If he wasn't restrained, this dog would probably go crazy. After 2 days of observation, Feng Zhao realized that Curly Hair didn't show any signs of rejection towards the learning machine. Perhaps it was because this was the first helmet in his life, and he had some special feelings for it. Or perhaps it was because he hadn't encountered any difficulties and learning was like a game to him. There were new lessons in the learning machine every day, and quizzes would be generated according to the progress of learning. Games and quizzes would be graded A, B, and C. For games that were difficult for many kids, such as Sudoku and crossword puzzles, Curly Hair was very good at them and received an A+. Guessing games weren't that impressive and were basically between B and C-, but he was interested. These were just mini-games between classes. Every time the learning machine was used, or at set intervals, a mini-game would appear. These mini-games were generated based on the knowledge learned that day. For example, crossword puzzles involved poems that had been learned that day or in the past few days. However, when Feng Zhao asked about his feelings, Curly Hair replied, "I still prefer the game console." "Then you have to work hard," Feng Zhao said. "What do I need to do?" "First, you have to graduate from secondary school." Of course, he couldn't go straight to school. He didn't need a graduation certificate. There were settings in the learning machine. All he had to do was reach secondary school graduation standards. Curly Hair learned very quickly, but Feng Zhao discovered that this dog was biased towards subjects. Science subjects, as well as history and geography, he learned them quickly. However, he was terrible at language. Sometimes, Curly Hair was like a high-speed computing machine. His ability to process data and store memories was astonishing. It wasn't something a human brain could compare to. Furthermore, his computing speed was still increasing. After completing the math test papers and seeing the A+, Curly Hair bounced a few times, wagged his tail, and stuck out his tongue as he laughed, as if he had already begun his glorious dog life. However, he was stumped by reading comprehension. Reading comprehension had caused him to doubt his dog life. Rote memorization was fine, but when it came to reading comprehension and composition, he wilted. In Curly Hair's opinion, reading comprehension in modern literature was already difficult enough. Reading comprehension in ancient poetry was simply demonic. Curly Hair cried when he didn't even get a C once again. Reading comprehension is too difficult. Wah, I'm just a dog. Why do I have to learn all this? My dog brain can't understand the thoughts of these literati. When they stir up emotions, it's even harder to understand than a knee-jerk reflex. How would I know what they want to express? Curly Hair didn't want to learn all this. He felt that it wasn't necessary. He was just a dog. He didn't need to go to school, nor did he really need a graduation certificate. What was the point of learning language? Feng Zhao replied solemnly to Curly Hair's whining about why he wanted to learn language, to better survive in human society. Feng Zhao hoped that through this learning process, Curly Hair would be able to better understand the bright and dark thoughts of human society. He hoped that he would be able to distinguish between good and bad words. He hoped that Curly Hair would be able to tell which were insinuations and which were just half-hearted excuses. Didn't the teaching materials you read yesterday say, if you can't speak or write, you won't go far, and you won't live long. Therefore, even if you don't like it, you still have to learn. You have to read all the recommended books every week. Read slowly. Curly Hair read quickly. His computer-like brain was different from humans and couldn't be viewed with common sense. After being lectured, Curly Hair sank into deep thought. He pondered Feng Zhao's words over 10 times, especially the phrase, to better survive in human society. He directly carved it into his brain. He felt that this phrase was very important and had to be comprehended carefully. After pondering for half a day, he understood. Curly Hair felt that he had finally fully understood the meaning of Feng Zhao's words. If he learned all this well, he would be able to act like a human on the internet. For example, when he played games and connected to the microphone. Chapter 441. Curly Hair worked even harder to make the transition from the learning console to the gaming console. However, there were some things that were too strenuous for him to learn. For example, reading comprehension and writing essays. Curly Hair didn't know if he had improved or not when he couldn't even get a C every time. After another small test, Curly Hair defended himself when Feng Zhao checked on his progress. I feel that I have improved a lot. I should be very close to a C-. Because of this, Feng Zhao changed the grading system to 100 points. Then, the next day, Curly Hair's reading comprehension was 21 points. Curly Hair's total score wasn't even half the passing mark. The weather was fine. Nanfeng and Zhuyu went out to look at a few houses for Feng Zhao and came back to report the situation. Nanfeng saw Curly Hair crouching in a corner the moment he entered the dormitory. Curly Hair was sobbing from time to time, and there were obvious tear stains at the bottom of his eyes. Why is our little Curly Curls crying again? Nanfeng was about to ask if Curly Hair was scolded again when he saw Feng Zhao and immediately changed his words. Are you suffering from anger again? Come, have some fruit. Nanfeng took out a paper box filled with small fruits from the bag he was carrying. When he saw Feng Zhao look over, he hurriedly explained, I bought these from the fruit shop at the entrance of Huangart. I asked around, and they said that dogs can eat these fruits too. They are rather cheap too. A box is only 21. Curly Hair cried even harder. Nanfeng could only let Zhuyu bring Curly Hair out for a walk. If the dog was in a bad mood, he would be fine after a walk. If that wasn't enough, then 2. As for the rest, what else could he say as an assistant? Whoever paid the wages was the boss. Curly Hair didn't seem very excited after being brought out for a walk. However, he regained his confidence during the mathematics test at night. The learning console also contained textbooks written by famous teachers from various continents. Unless it was a student who liked to study questions, most students would simply be traumatized. Curly Hair felt the same, but his feelings were more complicated. Science questions were a piece of cake. In the same amount of time, he could study 10 science questions, but he couldn't do a single reading comprehension question. Even if he did, he might get it wrong. After Curly Hair had finished all the primary school curriculum, Feng Zhao held Curly Hair and looked at him. Curly Hair had scored nearly full marks in every subject except for language. Feng Zhao still allowed Curly Hair to take secondary school courses. In order to celebrate his graduation from primary school and get one step closer to his personal terminal, Curly Hair was so happy that he ate 5 kilograms of dog food that night. Secondary school courses were a little more complicated. Feng Zhao topped up some money on his account. Many online courses had to be purchased. After watching a few videos, he chose an online class by a very popular teacher. The microphone was also on. Sometimes, teachers and students would interact, such as asking and answering questions in class. Of course, there were also some students who were unwilling to switch on their microphones and would just type their words into a voice message. This kind of classroom format was rather novel to Curly Hair. This was the first time he was pretending to be a human, so he had to perform well. Curly Hair pretended to be a middle school student and began his journey of attending online classes. However, this special student still brought a little trouble to the teacher's teaching. For example, a certain teacher who specialized in examinations asked, when you encounter a difficult problem while doing a test, it's like encountering a tiger on the road. How would you solve it? Curly Hair: eat it. Student: please be serious. The first teacher labeled this student with the ID Little Curly Curls as a troublemaker amidst the laughter of the other students online. Later on, Curly Hair felt that the things this teacher was teaching were too simple. He had learned everything and ran over to the class next door that specialized in competition questions. Then, he had stumped the teacher with his questions. It wasn't the type to nitpick and make trouble. Curly Hair had really been asking questions seriously. It was just that the questions he asked were either crafty or beyond the scope of the curriculum. For students, Those who could baffle the teacher with their questions always had the halo of cool. Some students also remembered little curly curls. However, this top student didn't seem to like adding friends. Actually, it wasn't that curly hair didn't want to add friends. It was just that he remembered Feng Zhao's words. Before he graduated from university, or if he didn't score 85 points in the language test, he wouldn't add friends. Feng Zhao was worried that curly hair's identity would be exposed if he wasn't careful. The teacher didn't know any of this. He had spent the past few days studying this student who had a lot of crafty questions. Although he could only hear the voice and couldn't see the person, the voice sounded young and tender. Even when he asked questions, there was a hint of innocence. However, behind the innocence was definitely a sinister face. Sharp teeth and a bloody mouth were just waiting to bite off a chunk of flesh from his body. Heh, some people are the best at pretending to be innocent. Don't even think of lying to me. A competition-type genius? He didn't believe it. How could there be so many geniuses in this world? If there really were geniuses, they would have been snatched away long ago. Those people in the school weren't fools. Nowadays, the various continents and districts were fighting for geniuses. It wasn't their turn to take lessons through the learning console platform. Thus, this was definitely a professional troublemaker. These kinds of things were too common. Nowadays, the competition for online classes was so intense. It wasn't uncommon for people to trip each other up. He felt that this time, this person was definitely sent by his peers. He couldn't stay. What he needed to think of was a reason to kick this person out of the class. After being stumped by another question, the teacher left a private message for curly hair. What he meant was, "You are already very impressive. I don't have anything else to teach you. I can recommend you a teacher, for example, XXX. The class is only half done here. I will refund you the remaining half of the money. It's better for you to die than for me. Go and harm others." The teacher thought to himself. Curly hair was also surprised when he saw the message. This teacher is really good. He can even get a refund for recommending a new teacher. The refunded money could be used to buy dog food. Curly hair felt that this deal was rather worth it. He agreed and left the class. When he left the class, he even sent the teacher a red packet to thank him. The language textbook said to respect teachers. After sending the message, the teacher was still thinking that if the other party didn't agree, he would just refund the money in full. He was just unlucky this time. Unexpectedly, the other party really agreed. When he looked again, the name Little Curly Curls was no longer on the online class list. There was also a small red packet with a message. "Thank you, teacher. Teacher, you are really a good person." The teacher. Could this red packet be poisoned? Curly hair didn't know what the previous teacher was thinking. After leaving the class, he clicked on the link that the previous teacher had recommended and entered another online class. This new class was mainly targeted at upper secondary school students. There were many people online in this online class. Most of them had been attracted by this teacher's resume. This was a university teacher who had published many articles and made many speeches. The introductory page was filled with all sorts of awards and honors. This online class was just a part-time job. Parents were very satisfied with this teacher's awards and honors. However, it was different for the students. They felt that listening to this teacher's class was very tiring. The huge amount of knowledge involved in every class left them at a loss. They simply couldn't keep up, especially when complicated terms that had never been seen in secondary school textbooks popped up from time to time. It made them dizzy. Every concept and formula required time to absorb and consolidate through a large number of practice questions. They wouldn't be able to keep up if curly hair spoke too quickly. However, this kind of class volume was still very easy for curly hair to accept. Thus, after adapting for 2 days, curly hair once again began his journey of seeking knowledge. He even got into an argument with the teacher over the solution to a question. Then, on the 3rd day of the new class, curly hair was kicked out. The teacher forcefully kicked him out of the class and left a message. "The money will be returned to you. Get lost." Curly hair got lost, and he seemed rather happy about it. This teacher is really nice. He doesn't even charge money for the class. Feng Zhao. The new reading compilation essays are all not bad. Go read the first 10. Curly Hair still couldn't decipher certain words and sentences. He also couldn't detect some insulting words. Speech was still fine. He could decipher it from the tone of voice. When he saw people outside, Curly Hair could also judge whether the other party had ill intentions based on their expressions and aura. However, when faced with words, he seemed exceptionally slow. While Curly Hair was looking down at the essay analysis, Fang Zhao received a call from Immerse. The name list for the Dissertation Defense Committee has been decided. The time for the dissertation defense will also be decided in the next few days. It will be arranged according to the order in which the applications were submitted. You are the first one. Prepare early. There was still some time before the formal dissertation defense. However, Fang Zhao was the first advanced student to have a dissertation defense. Coupled with the pressure from various parties, Immerse was worried that Fang Zhao would be nervous. It was easy to make mistakes when one was nervous during a dissertation defense. Once a mistake was made, it would be easy to be doubted. Thus, Immerse informed Fang Zhao in advance so that he could be mentally prepared. Fang Zhao wasn't nervous. He had written all the essays for the dissertation defense himself. Immerse had already briefed him on what he needed to take note of. It could be said that he had made ample preparations. Immerse analyzed the situation of this year's Dissertation Defense Committee chairman and committee members with Fang Zhao before hanging up. Fang Zhao opened his calendar and looked at his schedule. If there were any new to-do items or things that he needed to take note of, Nanfeng would mark them out. However, the calendar didn't have any indication for the upcoming period of time. Many people knew that Fang Zhao was nearing his dissertation defense, so they wouldn't look for him if there wasn't anything particularly important. Nanfeng could handle those small matters himself. Fang Zhao circled a row of dates on the calendar. His dissertation defense would most likely be during this period. As he was looking, he received another call notification. The moment he picked up, Fang Zhao hadn't even said a word when the other side started shouting. "Hello, Fang Zhao. I'm Sammy yet." Fang Zhao. Chapter 442. Zero had been floating a little recently. He had just taken part in a competitive esports competition and won the championship. The moment he had received the championship trophy, Zero had laughed flamboyantly and had the thought, "I actually won. Why am I so awesome? Did I save the Milky Way in my previous life?" These were the three questions that came from the bottom of his heart. Thus, Zero, who had received the championship trophy, started to tremble in awe. The ID he had used in the competition was Samyed. When he was happy, he wished that the whole world knew that he was the newly crowned Samyed. He firmly believed that the name Samyed was fated with him and was an extremely lucky ID. Unfortunately, he was too famous and couldn't change his stage name. However, he was in a good mood after winning the competition. Recently, when he had nothing to do, he would brag about it. It just so happened that Chu Bo had come to Huangzhou for a concert, so Zero had come to cheer on his old friend. He had even brought his esports comrades to Huangzhou to play and invited them to watch Chu Bo's concert. At the same time, he had organized a private gathering to meet up with his old friends from Huangzhou and introduce them to each other. Those who had accompanied Zero in the competition were all professional esports players and Lijiao region's top players. Although they came from different esports clubs, they usually focused their attention on Battle of the Century. Switching games was just to relax and change their mindset. They had never expected to meet Zero. After some consideration, they had accompanied Zero in the competition. Actually, there had been some luck involved in winning the championship. After receiving Zero's invitation, Fang Zhao didn't have much to do tonight. Zero's residence in Huangzhou wasn't far, so it wasn't a bad idea to take a stroll. When Fang Zhao arrived, there were already over 10 people at Zero's side. There were a few new faces. Inside, Danky Assis was bragging to others. As the son of the Interplanetary Fund's current chairman, Danky Assis didn't just live a carefree life. His activity level on the internet wasn't any lower than Zero's. Netizens jokingly called him Crown Prince of the Interplanetary Fund. The fake Crown Prince Danky had been very pleased recently. He didn't know what the brat his father had done and hadn't appeared in front of him recently, so his days were carefree and contented. Today, he only knew that Zero was hosting a private gathering. He didn't care who exactly was there. Recently, he had run over the moment he heard that there was a gathering and had even brought along a few bottles of his treasured alcohol. Danke was very open. Even when he saw a few new faces, he would quickly strike up a conversation. Anyone who could be invited to a private gathering by Zero was worth getting to know. After drinking some wine and having people supporting him, Danke had become arrogant. I have the most experience in taking care of naughty children. I'm not bragging. Don't mention naughty children, even if you really give me a bear. However, there was an honest person in the crowd who heard this and said, "It's illegal to own a bear now. Give me 3 naughty children. Isn't it inappropriate for the child to use the word only?" Danke raised his eyebrows after being repeatedly interrupted. He opened his mouth and was about to say something when he saw Feng Zhao walk in. The words he was about to say got stuck in his throat. Those useless reporters. Danke cursed the Huangzhou entertainment reporters in his heart. Wasn't Feng Zhao's movements supposed to be reported in real time? Why didn't I receive any news? Although he wasn't taking care of the little brat anymore, Danke still wasn't too willing to see Feng Zhao. The Interplanetary Fund's attitude towards Feng Zhao was too strange. Even his old man became cautious whenever Feng Zhao was mentioned. Although he didn't wish to see Feng Zhao, he could only curse in his heart. He couldn't show it on the surface. Thus, Danke instantly switched to business mode. When he needed to smile, he would still show a proper smile. Any more would be too exaggerated, and any less would be too unfamiliarity. Feng Zhao naturally sensed this change, but he didn't fuss over it. At this moment, others also came over to greet Feng Zhao. Those who were observant also noticed the instant change in Danke's expression when he looked at Feng Zhao. Their evaluation of Feng Zhao changed once again. Feng Zhao was indeed a person who concealed himself deeply. At the same time, on the balcony, Zero, Chubo, and Wu Tianhao were squatting there like 3 potatoes. Chubo held a cigarette in one hand and had a worried expression on his face. "I've been under a lot of pressure recently. You guys go in first. Let me have some peace and quiet." Regarding the concert, Wu Tianhao lit a cigarette and tossed one to Zero. Upon hearing about the concert, Zero elbowed the depressed Chubo. "Hey, I heard you were invited for a meeting again?" Chubo didn't want to talk about this topic. He had been invited for a meeting. During the last leg of his global concert tour, he had let loose and gotten reported for using foul language. As a result, his concert in Huangzhou had nearly been cancelled. Because of this, he had been invited for a meeting by the Huangqing Cultural, Broadcasting, and New Bureau. However, this wasn't the reason why Chubo was under so much pressure. The Huangqing Cultural, Broadcasting, and New Bureau had treated him nicely during the meeting on account of the Chu family of Jinzhou's great generals. However, right after the meeting, the Cultural, Broadcasting, and New Bureau had reported this matter to Old Master Chu. If not for the concert in Huangqing, Old Master Chu would have summoned Chubo back to reprimand him in person. This time, he had only reprimanded Chubo online, but if he still couldn't control his mouth during the Huangzhou concert, there wouldn't be a next leg of the world tour. Although Old Master Chu hadn't said it explicitly, Chubo understood what he meant. Chubo wasn't afraid of his parents, but he was afraid of his grandfather. When Old Master Chu lectured him, he didn't seem to have any emotional fluctuations and didn't beat or scold him. Instead, he was able to make Chubo obediently admit his mistakes. Heh, old tricks. Chubo was afraid and helpless. He continued to hold the cigarette in his hand and looked up with a depressed expression. Chubo didn't want Zero and Wu Tianhao to know that he was admitting his mistakes in front of Old Master Chu. Zero looked at the time and stood up. "Bobo, stop squatting on the balcony. Let me bring you to see my new trophy." Zero's objective for this gathering was to flaunt his new trophy and prove to everyone that other than Feng Zhao, he could also win an esports award. What's more, he was the champion. Chubo continued squatting there to pack potatoes and rolled his eyes at Zero. A bunch of gods and a hindrance had won a small competition based on luck. How could he not have a fucking clue? Zero really didn't have a clue. He didn't consider the scale of the competition or the value of the trophy. All he wanted to do was show off to others. Fang Zhao should be here soon. I'll show him my trophy, Zero said. Fang Zhao. Chu Bo's depressed expression stiffened. You even called him? Of course I called him. He was also in the esports circles before. Zero didn't sense the change in Chu Bo's tone, but Wu Tianhao beside him did. Bobo, are you afraid of Fang Zhao? Wu Tianhao asked. Bullshit. I'm afraid of him? Chu Bo was so angry that he jumped up. Just as he finished speaking, the balcony door opened and someone walked out. Chu Bo hadn't even gotten a clear look at Chu Bo's face when he felt his nerves tighten, and he flicked the cigarette in his hand away. Chu Bo, Zero and Wu Tianhao looked at Fang Zhao, who had just walked in, then at the cigarette, but that Chu Bo had flicked away. Chu Bo, you still say you aren't afraid of Fang Zhao? You were so scared that you even threw away your cigarette. Actually, Fang Zhao hadn't wanted to scare anyone and hadn't specially eavesdropped on their conversation. He had only smelled the smoke. There were many singing artists in the academy who took great care to protect their voices. Even if they smoked, they were extremely restrained. Chu Bo, who had to practice singing every day, was actually squatting here smoking? Chu Bo's face turned dark red as he was stared at by the three of them. He had no time to conceal his embarrassment and anger. After a while, he half explained, I wasn't smoking. I just lit a cigarette and smelled it. Chu Bo's heart was on the verge of collapsing. Why do I have to explain? Why am I acting like a coward? Could it be that I've been traumatized by Fang Zhao? Sensing Chu Bo's awkwardness, Fang Zhao didn't harp on this matter. Instead, he turned to Zero. I heard you just won a championship? Zero had originally been wondering why Chu Bo was so afraid of Fang Zhao, but when he heard Fang Zhao mention a championship, he instantly forgot about Chu Bo's matter. He laughed heartily and brought Fang Zhao to look at his championship trophy. After flaunting the trophy, Zero recalled what the other esports athletes had mentioned and asked Fang Zhao, did you receive an invitation to Fiery Bird's All-Star match next month? Fiery Bird's All-Star match involved 20 of Fiery Bird's more popular games. In terms of nature, the All-Star match was still considered an exhibition match. Invitations weren't based on teams and were only invited to a portion of the top-ranked gaming gods. Among these 20 games, Battle of the Century occupied 90% of the popularity, so naturally, it invited the most celebrity gamers. Therefore, it could be said to be the All-Star match for Battle of the Century. Fang Zhao still didn't know about this and replied, Nope, I don't play professionally right now. Zero, who also hadn't received an invitation, felt better. He patted Fang Zhao's shoulder comfortingly. If no one invited you, how about we watch the match live? I've already made arrangements with Wu Tianhao and the others. You guys go ahead. I have a thesis defense next month and still have to prepare to graduate, Fang Zhao replied. Zero had a look of sympathy. A forgotten esports athlete who was past his prime couldn't even watch a match. How pitiful. Yinzhou. The members of the Silver Wing professional gaming team had just finished a meeting and were discussing. Jinro and 5 others had already received invitations to Fiery Bird's All-Star match. Schwarzer, who had also received an invitation, suddenly said, I wonder if Zhao God received an invitation? Even after such a long time, Schwarzer still clearly remembered the merciless kick he had received the first time they had challenged Fang Zhao. Ever since he had started playing Battle of the Century, he had gone from a newbie to a senior member of the team, but he still couldn't help but shudder at the mention of Fang Zhao. The only person who could kick him offline with one kick, other than a monster in the game, was Fang Zhao. At the mention of Fang Zhao, the group of people who had been laughing suddenly quietened down. Only after a while did someone speak. That can't be. Zhao God is busy with his graduation. He should be doing his thesis defense during the All-Star match. I have analyzed his schedule. Logically speaking, he shouldn't be participating. What about the special guest? He is Fiery Bird's spokesperson. The All-Star match is considered an important commercial event. As the spokesperson, he wouldn't be absent, right? He also didn't attend Fiery Bird's customer gratitude ceremony at the end of last year. Jinro rubbed his chin and thought for a bit before kicking Schwarzer. Ask Nanfeng. The last time Zhao God came back, I saw you talking to Nanfeng quite a bit. Schwarzer hesitated for a bit before sending Nanfeng a message. They couldn't directly ask Feng Zhao. What if they disturbed Feng Zhao's composition? Feng Zhao would torture them to death when he came back. 5 minutes later, Schwarzer heaved a sigh of relief when he saw Nanfeng's reply. Ha 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 ha, big bro. Nan said that Zhao God will be busy with his thesis defense and won't be participating in other events. The All-Star match was actually a stage for popular gamers like them to show off. The competition was secondary. Entertainment was more important. Schwarzer didn't want to be kicked offline by Feng Zhao while he was showing off. How embarrassing would that be in front of fans all over the world? Chapter 443. Feng Zhao did not stay too long at Zero's small gathering. Mo Lang had given him another task, and he had to return to handle it. Before Feng Zhao left, Zero told Feng Zhao, "Let's practice when we have time. See you in the game." The few Lijiao professional esports players who heard this, "Senior Master, you are getting ahead of yourself today." Feng Zhao smiled and replied, "Sure, but I might have to wait until after I graduate." Back in his dormitory, Feng Zhao looked at the questions Mo Lang had sent him regarding his thesis and the time for his defense. 10 minutes ago, the school had decided on Feng Zhao's defense time. After him, the other advanced students from his batch would proceed according to the time they had submitted their applications. Half an hour after Feng Zhao's reply was confirmed, Feng Zhao received a message from Fiery Bird's relevant person in charge. They had already found out the exact time of Feng Zhao's reply. The day of Feng Zhao's reply happened to be the first day of the All-Star match. However, the first 2 days of the All-Star match were not part of the Battle of the Century battlefield. It was on the third day. Battle of the Century's All-Star match would invite a portion of special guests to participate. Some of them were already retired ace players. Perhaps they had retired from the professional scene before Battle of the Century had appeared, but at their peak, they had been superstars in the gaming circles. Fiery Bird's method was also a kind of sentimental marketing, but gamers were very receptive. Feng Zhao was different from those people, but he had caused a stir in the early stages of Battle of the Century. Even if he was no longer in the gaming circles, he was still a hot topic. Perhaps he could even attract the attention of people outside the gaming circles. Furthermore, with Feng Zhao's status as a spokesperson, Fiery Bird did not want to let him go. After all, it was a commercial company. Profits were everything. Even if they knew that Feng Zhao was nearing the critical juncture of his graduation, they would still fight for it. Perhaps they could convince Feng Zhao to participate? Feng Zhao rejected them. When he had signed the endorsement contract with Fiery Bird, he had said that during his advanced studies, his studies would be the most important. Feng Zhao would only cooperate with Fiery Bird's commercial activities if it did not involve his studies. But this time, it was a crucial moment. Even if he had the confidence and the mood to play something else, the people watching him would not be willing to see that happen, especially Mo Lang. The old master was already so old, yet he was still worried. Mo Lang also felt bad. Regarding this, Fiery Bird said, "No problem. You can think it over. Matches involving special guests will only be decided on the 5th or 6th day of the start. I wish you all the best." After the call ended, Feng Zhao thought about the All-Star match and scrolled through his friend circle and social media. Over at Silver Wing, Jinro and the others had already flashed their invitations. As he scrolled, Feng Zhao saw a new status update from Danky Assis. A new little friend picture. The accompanying picture was of Sith squatting in the middle, with 2 extremely awe-inspiring mechanical dogs on each side. When seated, they were much taller than the squatting Danky. In the comments section, a bunch of people were crying out in envy and jealousy. There were even people asking if Fiery Bird was starting to make mechanical pets, and if this was a new product that was about to be sold. Crowdfunding was fine too. However, Danky, who had been smiling happily in the photo, instantly had a desolate look on his face after the photo was taken. Posting photos was just a show off, but who could understand the pain behind the photos? Danky wanted to curse when he saw the huge hole in the sofa. Although it was his mistake that caused the sofa to burn. But why did the dog carry laser weapons? Was this a fucking mechanical pet? This was the Terminator. This was the end of his contented life. Looking at the brat playing with a black ball at the side, Danky took a photo of the remains of the sofa and sent it to his father. He had to let his father know of his bitterness. He also had to apply for more funds to bring this brat who was suspected to be the star conglomerate crown prince to play. Suddenly, he thought of the historical fantasy drama that had aired some time ago. After researching the pros and cons, Danky had given himself the persona of a crown prince's study companion. When the crown prince ascended to the throne, he would also be able to enjoy a good life. With this thought, Danky felt much more at ease. Even his newly appointed little friends, Gooden and Gook, were much more pleasing to the eye. Wasn't it just a sofa that had been burned? Even burning 10 sofas would be worth it. Feng Zhao's interest was piqued when he saw the 2 mechanical dogs in Danky's photo. However, he had to put this aside first. He had to complete the task that Mo Lang had assigned him. Time passed day by day. Very quickly, it was the day of the thesis defense. The thesis defense was a test of the theoretical knowledge that advanced students had learned over the past year. Mo Lang had already told Feng Zhao about the various questions that the thesis defense committee members might raise. Some of the thesis defense committee members might be asking questions about the content of the thesis, but they might suddenly find some punctuation mistakes and disrupt the thoughts of the respondent before continuing to ask questions about the content of the thesis. Even if one was about to vomit from reading one's own thesis and couldn't be more familiar with it, it was impossible to cover everything. It was impossible to predict all the questions that the thesis defense committee members would raise. The most important thing was to remain calm and collected. Professor Carter walked toward the seat of the advisor. When he saw the name Mo Lang written on the seat plate, he didn't utter a word. Without a change in expression, he circled around and sat in the back row. Everyone in the academy knew that Professor Carter was just a nominal advisor. The one who was truly advising Feng Zhao was old Mo. The thesis defense of the advanced students of 12 tones was held in a large conference room. Not only did many teachers come to watch, but many students also came. If not for the limited number of seats, all the students would have come. Those who came late didn't even have a place to stand, let alone a seat. Before the thesis defense, Mo Lang had specially called Feng Zhao over to discuss the details of the thesis defense. For a top-notch advanced course like 12 tones, the thesis defense lasted at least 4 hours. There were breaks in between, but it basically took up half a day or more. It was even longer than a PhD thesis defense. Having pressure is a good thing, but don't give yourself unnecessary pressure. You are already doing very well. Maintain your good condition until the end of the thesis defense. There won't be any problems. Jing checked the time and walked into the thesis defense conference room with Feng Zhao. When everyone was seated, it was time for Feng Zhao's thesis defense to begin. In the duration of no less than 4 hours, Feng Zhao had to endure the bombardment of the thesis defense committee members. Any one of the committee members could make the entire school tremble. Questions came one after another, and the audience could feel the tense atmosphere that made their backs sweat. As expected, those who could successfully graduate from the 12 tones were all gods. In a short year, not only did they have to seize the opportunity to absorb professional knowledge and improve themselves, they also had to busy themselves with theses, thesis defenses, and graduation works. The students present couldn't help but compare in their hearts. If it were them, could they do it? Could they reply calmly like Feng Zhao? While Feng Zhao was defending, elsewhere in Huangzhou, the all-star match hosted by Fiery Bird was starting. Zero, Wu Tianhao, and the others also came to join in on the fun. At the all-star match, champion gamers of all sizes could be seen everywhere. Regardless of whether they had received an invitation to the all-star match or not, they all showed up at the venue. Zero considered himself one of them. As for how much of a champion was exaggerated, Zero expressed, not listening. After all, I am someone who won a championship. After touring the various competition venues, Zero was puzzled. Why are there so many kids? What the hell are these games? There are even virtual Rubik's Cubes. Wu Tianhao, who had also only paid attention to Battle of the Century, looked at the information he had just found and said, Fiery Bird cooperated with many learning console brands to launch this. It is called an international competition, but the majority of the players for these games are students. I didn't expect the virtual Rubik's Cubes to be so popular. There's such a thing? Why didn't this rule exist when I was in school? Zero was indignant. This is the right to participate that was finally obtained by students after decades of protests. Come to think of it, even if there was such a rule when we were in school, you wouldn't be able to participate. The people who are invited here have higher IQs than you. Wu Tianhao's gaze avoided the small game venues and looked at another building. However, Battle of the Century is still for adults. These small competitions were all for minors. In his opinion, they were games for kids. Every time he saw these games, he would recall the fear of being dominated by learning consoles during his school days. Let's go. Don't look at these. It's boring. Let's go watch the Battle of the Century practice matches. Although the Battle of the Century competition was scheduled to start on the third day, the godly gamers from all continents had already gathered here today. Even if there were no official competitions, there would still be free practice matches. At the same time, in Huangart's advanced student dormitory, Curly Hair finished 2 sets of test papers and a reading comprehension paper with much difficulty. He was about to enter the online class to listen to the lecture when a small window popped up on the page. Do you want to get up close and personal with Fiery Bird's All-Star competition? Do you want to interact with the world's top gamers online? There's no need to go to the venue. The All-Star competition online platform has already been opened. Curly Hair couldn't see the long string of words that followed. His eyes glowed as if he had seen meat when he was hungry. Ayo, Fiery Bird. Curly Hair followed the notification and found the new icon with the Fiery Bird image. He rushed in impatiently. All-Star competition venue, virtual Rubik's Cube venue. A popular high school student magazine was interviewing the virtual Rubik's Cube record holder. This 16-year-old record holder had set a new record when he was 14 years old. 2 years had passed, and no one had been able to break it. In these 2 years, he had accepted a number of Rubik's Cube endorsement deals and had made a fortune. It could be said that a single match when he was 14 years old had allowed him to gain fame and wealth a step ahead of his peers. After the interview, the host asked, "Next, you will accept the challenge of 10 virtual Rubik's Cube players from all over the world. Are you confident?" Of course. The 16-year-old record holder adjusted his bow tie, faced the camera, and flashed a charming smile. Only I can break my record. The host picked an online audience member. Of course, in order to maintain the entertainment value of the program, this wasn't a random selection. The system would pick from those with better battle records. As for why it wasn't picked from the battle records rankings, this was just an exhibition match and not an official challenge match. There was no need to make the atmosphere so tense. All the record holder had to do was show off his skills and interact with the lucky audience member. Good for you, good for me, good for everyone. After the selection was made, the host raised his eyebrows when he saw the information of the lucky audience member displayed on the big screen. This little curly curls seemed to be a primary school student. The big screen displayed the lucky audience member's ID and education level, primary school, only certified by the Learning Console platform. Of course, the other party could also be a secondary school student. Some people were in secondary school in real life, and the Learning Console platform had frozen the Learning Console at the primary school level. Some children might still be in primary school, but their knowledge had already reached secondary school level. The platform's education level was secondary school. However, this was only a form of certification that belonged to the platform. It was similar to levels in games and wasn't recognized by the Ministry of Education. However, this lucky audience member's account was still active recently, so he was most likely a primary school student. Looks like he's also a good player. Alright, now, let's connect to this lucky audience member who was chosen. The host sent a call request. Then, It was rejected. Host. Maybe this audience member was too emotional and pressed the wrong button. As he said this, he sent another call request. Again, it was rejected. Host. The atmosphere suddenly became awkward. Some of the audience members laughed. The host maintained his smile. Hello, student little curly curls? Is it inconvenient for you to talk? You can also send text messages, but it's best if you can send voice messages. We need to confirm whether you're playing by yourself or a robot. On the third call request, the call was finally connected. Everyone in the room could hear a series of bam, 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 bam sounds, as well as the sound of a bag being unpacked on the other end. Host. Student little curly curls, are you eating snacks? There was a pause on the other end of the call. An innocent and young voice asked tentatively, I can't eat? Of course you can. Don't be nervous. The host smiled. May I ask why you rejected the call just now? Fong. My dad said that other than in class, I shouldn't casually talk to others. In the dormitory for advanced students, Curly Hair, who was gnawing on a dog's teeth-grinding stick, gave himself a thumbs up for his quick-wittedness. With my dad as Fong Zhao persona, no one would know he was a dog. Chapter 444. Curly Hair wouldn't casually talk to people. The focus was on people. However, in the ears of the host and the audience, it automatically became, don't casually talk to strangers. The host smiled warmly and said, that's right. Don't casually talk to strangers. Of course, this is Fiery Bird's all-star competition. It's official, so we can still talk. So, student little curly curls, how are you playing the virtual Rubik's Cube? Curly Hair recalled his recent battle results with other people on the learning platform and replied, not bad. He didn't know what level he was at. Actually, when he had the most fun playing the virtual Rubik's Cube, he had been using Fong Zhao's gaming helmet. Back then, he hadn't been online and had been competing against himself. His results hadn't been uploaded to the internet, so nobody knew his true level. He also didn't have a clear understanding of his own abilities. However, he remembered Fong Zhao praising him. That should be not bad, right? The host didn't know what Curly Hair was thinking. She could only hear that Curly Hair's reply seemed a little lacking in confidence, but she didn't think much of it. Many people, no matter how good they were, would still feel weak when facing a world champion. So, student little curly curls, are you ready for the challenge? Wait a moment. Curly Hair ran to lock the door and even put up a sign to prevent Fong Zhao from suddenly returning and exposing himself. The audience only heard a burst of noise. After a short while, little curly curls said, done. The host glanced at the technician, who gestured an okay to indicate that there were no problems. Then let's begin. At another venue in the all-star competition area, Zero didn't watch those godly players practice with Wu Tianhao. Instead, he found a place to pose. Zero always had the self-confidence that even though he wasn't a celebrity, he could easily grab headlines with his newfound talent. His agent was numb. Although he didn't think that Zero would be able to grab too much attention in the all-star competition, as an experienced agent, he knew Zero's temper too well. On account of his high salary, there were some truths that couldn't be said. At times like this, it was either praise or shut up. Zero finally took a few photos that he was satisfied with. Just as he was about to post them, he saw an arrogant display of fireworks in a certain venue. It's the Rubik's Cube competition hall. Someone should have succeeded in the challenge or set a new record, the agent said. These small competition halls were actually just a backdrop in the all-star competition area. Many students didn't have to go to school on the weekends and would come from afar to watch the all-star competition. These halls looked lively on the surface, but they didn't have much of a presence. The people who went there were mostly younger students or parents with their children. The slightly older students all went to the Battle of the Century halls. As a result, Whenever there was something new, the minigame hall would want to set off a salute to attract everyone's attention. As he spoke, Zero realized that a few of Fiery Bird's all-star competition news outlets that he followed had also reported on this matter. A primary school student breaking the Rubik's Cube record? If you want to set a new record, then set a new record. Why do you have to be so angry? Since when can elementary school students steal the headlines? Zero was unhappy. In the Rubik's Cube competition hall, the record holder sitting on the stage went from being unconvinced at the start to doubting his own life, and his face turned pale. He lost the first round, but he was just a little slower, so the host suggested 3 rounds. Then, he lost all 3 rounds. How did he meet such a person? Why was his opponent always just a little faster than him? The 16-year-old former record holder fell silent. If he couldn't maintain the record, he only had 2 choices: think of a way to increase his speed or change his profession. He had earned enough money in the past 2 years and could indeed do other things. But he still couldn't accept losing like this, just a little more. Was it because he had run too many business events and lacked practice? He had actually lost to a primary school student. The host looked at the technician with a questioning look. Was he cheating? The opponent was so fast that he seemed like a professional troublemaker. The technician shook his head. He hadn't detected it. They usually played with the learning console's Rubik's Cube, which ranged from low-level to high-level. Today, they were competing with the learning console's high-level Rubik's Cube. The host hadn't expected such a situation to occur. However, to them, having news was also a good thing. After the 3 rounds, the host wanted to know more about Curly Hair. Can I eat something? Curly Hair wasn't the least bit excited about breaking the record. He hadn't even tried his best. Of course. The host smiled. Are you hungry? That's right. It's time for lunch. Thus, the live audience heard a series of crunching sounds like biscuits being gnawed on. Oh, are you eating snacks? Snacks can't be treated as meals. Where's your parent? The host asked. He went to school. Curly Hair replied. Then, the host continued fishing for information and found out that little Curly Curls' parent had gone to school and wouldn't be back in the afternoon. Little Curly Curls could only eat snacks. Little Curly Curls' parent was a student? Master's or PhD? Which school? He had to be pulled out and criticized. The audience felt that they had already found the truth and labeled Little Curly Curls' parent as irresponsible. There were indeed many people who took care of their children while attending school, but they wouldn't leave their children at home for an entire day. They didn't even have a nanny robot. Could it be that their family's financial situation was difficult? As the host continued fishing for information, the audience started to imagine a poor family with a parent busy with school and a child who could only sit by the learning console and munch on biscuits on weekends. How pitiful. The host also expressed her sympathy. However, she was more concerned about whether she could create more news. Thus, she persuaded Curly Hair to try a few more difficult and niche Rubik's Cubes. Thus, amidst the constant crunching of snacks, the live audience watched as Little Curly Curls broke the record of the 7 variants of the Rubik's Cube given by the host. Furthermore, he broke the record in one go. At this moment, the host was elated and proud. I randomly picked a genius. However, just as the host was about to list the Rubik's Cubes, Curly Hair stopped. Tired? Let's take a break and chat a bit, the host said. When the other party was tired, they would let down their guard. That was the best way to get information out of them. I'm not playing anymore, Curly Hair said. He just wanted to eat some dog food in peace. But the host kept jabbering and trying to get information out of him. He kept asking for his name and the name of his dad. How could he say the name of his dad? If he said it, Feng Zhao would definitely cut off the internet and throw him to Muzhou to herd sheep. He only wanted to be a gamer dog and not a shepherd dog. However, even though Curly Hair wanted to quit, the host didn't want to let him go just like that. We can still continue after a break. Oh, right. You have a reward for completing the challenge and setting a new record today, the host said. Wouldn't he be able to keep Curly Hair with a reward? Curly Hair was tempted when he heard that there was a reward. What's the reward? Curly Hair asked. You will receive a very special and unique Star Edition learning machine. No need. Curly Hair decisively went offline. For something like the learning machine, one was enough. Wasn't so many reading comprehension machines enough? No matter how special it was still a learning machine. You actually want another learning machine to increase the workload? Are you all demons? The host looked at the other party has ended the call, pop up on the big screen, and finished his sentence with a stiff expression. And a $2 million reward. Curly Hair, who had left Fiery Bird's Star Channel, didn't know there was still a reward. He secretly rejoiced. Luckily, I escaped quickly. He also noticed that his account had received many messages from strangers. There were too many. He thought back to what he had said today and looked at the messages sent by these strangers. Things like friend requests, business collaborations, technical advice, class address, these weren't important. No one had recognized him as a dog, and he hadn't exposed Feng Zhao. But he was apprehensive. He felt like he had done something wrong. He hadn't caused any trouble for Feng Zhao, right? Humans were too scheming. Feng Zhao was right. He still had to learn a lot to pretend to be a human. Curly Hair guiltily deleted all those messages. He even deleted the Fiery Bird star icon. But there were still messages from strangers. Curly Hair deleted them without even looking and set it so that non-friends couldn't send private messages. Finally, peace. If he cleared his call history, Feng Zhao wouldn't know when he returned, right? Feng Zhao, who was busy dealing with the committee's barrage of questions, didn't know that he was being made a scapegoat. After the 6-hour segment was over, Feng Zhao left the conference room and spoke to Mo Lang before getting into the car with Zui Yu and Yin Biao's escort. The segment was quite a distance away from the dormitory. Besides Huang art teachers and students, there were also many entertainment reporters. Nanfeng drove over to pick Feng Zhao up so that he wouldn't be bothered by them. Nanfeng glanced at Zui Yu. Zui Yu gave him a thumbs up and knew that Feng Zhao's segment had gone smoothly. Boss, Fiery Bird called again when you were doing your segment. They invited you to participate. MMHM, I received their message. Feng Zhao had just left the segment's conference room when he received a new message. It was from Fiery Bird, congratulating him on his successful segment and inviting him to participate in the All-Star match as a special guest. Nanfeng didn't bring it up again. Instead, he talked about the news he had just seen to liven up the atmosphere. Speaking of Fiery Bird's All-Star match, boss, you might not know, but a primary school student went to the All-Star match today. He even set a few records in a row. Ha ha ha, that's interesting. That kid's ID is Little Curly Curls. It's very similar to our Curly Hair's name. It sounds so familiar. I even gave him a like. Nanfeng even ranted to Feng Zhao about how irresponsible Little Curly Curls' parents were. They actually left the kid alone at home on a weekend to munch on biscuits. How could biscuits be eaten when a child was growing? Feng Zhao, he was just about to reject Fiery Bird's second invitation when he retracted his hand. Chapter 445. When the Fiery Bird staff sent the message to Feng Zhao, they had the mentality of, I won't give up until I persuade him a few more times. If they could pull Feng Zhao into the All-Star match, even if he only showed his face, it would bring them a lot of benefits. Feng Zhao's influence in the industry was incomparable to that of other contestants. They had prepared 3 messages for Feng Zhao's defense: a bad defense, a good defense but under a lot of pressure, and a good defense and calm state of mind. They had also arranged for someone to report on Feng Zhao's defense. Once Feng Zhao was done with his defense, they would send over the invitations they had prepared. They had been wondering which reason to persuade Feng Zhao if he rejected again. Who knew? Feng Zhao said he would reply in 2 hours. It's good that he didn't reject directly. This shows that Feng Zhao is willing to participate. But Feng Zhao's time isn't all his. He has to comply with the school's arrangements, and there's Mo Lang watching over him. I don't know if he will be able to apply for leave. Why don't we prepare some gifts and discuss it with Mo Lang? Let's not. If they went over, Venerable Mo would make a complaint to the relevant authorities. Venerable Imo was very stubborn in this aspect. Threats and bribes wouldn't work. They could only rely on Feng Zhao himself. If Feng Zhao really couldn't participate, they could only choose a substitute. But that way, the scope of influence would be much smaller, and the benefits would be limited. After Nanfeng drove the car into the dormitory's underground garage, Feng Zhao let them go back first and took the elevator upstairs alone. In the dormitory, Curly Hair, who had fallen asleep doing questions, twitched his ears and sprang up. As if recalling something, Curly Hair hurriedly ran over to unlock the locked door. He looked around the living room in a fluster and guilty conscience. He rushed over to erase the information on the notification board, but he didn't control his strength well. The electronic notification board snapped with a kacha sound. Seeing that Feng Zhao was about to open the door, Curly Hair swallowed the broken notification board in a moment of desperation. Then, he crouched at the door and wagged his tail nonchalantly, pretending everything was normal. Feng Zhao opened the door and saw Curly Hair's innocent and obedient face. Feng Zhao didn't say anything. He closed the door and scanned the room. His gaze lingered on the place where the notification board had been. Then he walked over and turned on the learning console. All the historical records in the learning machine had been cleared. Only test papers and purchased courses were left. Quite a clean deletion, Feng Zhao said. Curly Hair wanted to wag his tail, but after wagging it twice, he felt that something wasn't right. He stopped and carefully looked at Feng Zhao with an innocent expression. Feng Zhao used his personal terminal to search for the few pieces of news that Nanfeng had told him about today and listed them on the floating screen. When Curly Hair saw the news clearly, his neck shrank back and his ears perked up in fright. Feng Zhao flipped through the news. Mysterious primary school student? Curly Hair hung his head. Luckily, you remembered what I said and didn't say my name. Otherwise, you could have gone to Muzhou to herd sheep. Curly Hair hung his head even lower. You're having fun setting records? He didn't even take the 2 million yuan bonus. Curly Hair raised his head abruptly and looked at the piece of news Feng Zhao had dug up as well as what the host had said after the call ended. 2 million. It was enough to buy a luxury version of a game console. There's even a bonus. Why did the host say the learning machine first? Curly Hair's eyes widened in shock. Feng Zhao glanced at it and said, "Don't even think about the bonus." Receiving a bonus required a bank account and proof of identity. It couldn't be exposed. Feng Zhao selected a portion of the news and played it for Curly Hair to see so that Curly Hair would have an idea of how he would be affected. Curly Hair, who had thought that he had perfectly avoided the host's words, had already exposed a lot. Those reporters were very sharp and had already made some guesses. For example, Little Curly Curl's parent might be someone with a sensitive identity. Look, there hadn't been any news of the 2 million yuan bonus. Either he was disdainful or his identity was too sensitive to be exposed. Either way, they were curious. They weren't afraid of your identity being sensitive. They were afraid that there wouldn't be anything to dig up. Some reporters had specially investigated primary school students who were especially good at Rubik's Cubes. There were also people who searched through audio recordings to find the corresponding person, but they didn't find anything. Feng Zhao thought for a bit and checked the various resources in the learning machine. There were questions from famous schools and lectures from famous teachers. However, these had limited effects on Curly Hair. There were also some children's dramas in the learning machine. Feng Zhao picked out 2 for Curly Hair to watch. Since text was too difficult for Curly Hair to understand, he would use videos. It would be more vivid. However, the learning machine was worthy of being called a learning machine. Did you think you were watching these dramas for nothing? There were even questions to solve. Thus, Curly Hair temporarily broke away from the text version and immersed himself in a new question bank. However, this was still a film art. Sometimes, there were some exaggerated acting techniques that Curly Hair could easily misunderstand. Furthermore, those with poor acting skills could mislead Curly Hair. Feng Zhao had no choice but to add the learning machine's news section to Curly Hair's daily watch list. Curly Hair wouldn't watch it himself if it wasn't added. Besides completing Feng Zhao's tasks, Curly Hair had been studying the various games in the learning machine. After settling Curly Hair's matters, Feng Zhao checked the news online and gave Mo Leng a call before replying to Fiery Bird. He was willing to participate in the all-star match as a special guest. This made Fiery Bird very happy. They immediately expressed that they would send someone over to discuss. Feng Zhao had agreed to participate because he wanted to go to the venue and understand the situation. If necessary, he could create even bigger news to divert the attention of those reporters. Although the news regarding the all-star match had been quickly stolen by the various gods of Battle of the Century, it was still better to go and take a look. Fiery Bird's representative quickly arrived at Feng Zhao's dormitory and explained the rules of the all-star match to Feng Zhao. There are a total of 12 modes. You can choose 3. We will distribute them afterward. Many of the special guests invited to the all-star match weren't professional Battle of the Century players. The organizers would give them 3 chances to choose. If 2 or more special guests chose one mode at the same time, the organizers would make arrangements. In short, the special guests had the right to choose, but they didn't have the final say. However, Fiery Bird had also said that this was a commercial entertainment competition. Even if the special guests were ultimately allocated to a mode they weren't proficient in, Fiery Bird would give them more benefits in terms of weapons and equipment. Even if they lost, they wouldn't look too bad. Feng Zhao looked through the information sent over by the organizers and chose 3 modes in order of preference. The representative was a little surprised to see Feng Zhao's first choice. In fact, very few special guests choose this mode, the representative said. Are you sure you want to choose this first? I'm sure. All right. Are there any requirements for weapons and equipment? We will try our best to satisfy you. You can also apply for some powerful equipment. Just the basics will do. Are you sure? Yes. Chapter 446. Feng Zhao would be attending Fiery Bird's all-star match as a special guest. He couldn't tell anyone else, but Nanfeng and the other 2 would know. Nanfeng was rather excited when he heard this news. If not for the need to keep it a secret, he would have bragged about it on his friend's social media. Those invited to the all-star match as special guests were all godly players. He had originally thought that Feng Zhao would have to wait until his graduation to make a public appearance. He had never expected that he would have the opportunity now. There are still a few days before the date set by Fiery Bird. Before that, I will still be at school. Venerable Mo has given me a task, Feng Zhao said. Don't worry, boss. I will definitely arrange my schedule well. Nanfeng promised. We will definitely not leak this news. Zuiyu and Yin Biao also expressed that they would definitely keep it a secret. Feng Zhao trusted them in this aspect. Thus, after arranging his schedule, Feng Zhao continued to prepare for his graduation concert. Now that he had completed his thesis defense, the next crucial step was the concert. Feng Zhao's whereabouts after his thesis defense had been captured by many entertainment reporters camping at Huangart. Sometimes, Feng Zhao would even be spotted at Mo Leng's residence. Because of this, those who had speculated that Feng Zhao would attend the all-star match gradually gave up on this idea. In this industry, if you didn't make an appearance for half a year, you would just be a legend. Feng Zhao belonged to the legendary category of people. However, unlike the majority of retired gods, Feng Zhao was too active outside the gaming circles. News of him was often seen, but there was still a sense of distance between them. An esports critic had once said that Feng Zhao was a meteor-like legend who left the gaming circles to pursue the art of music. Crazy point-sweeping demon? That was something that had happened a long time ago. That was a legend, and those who followed could only worship him from videos. At Fiery Bird's all-star match venue, following the first and second day of the mini-games, as well as the appearances of various Battle of the Century gods, attention continued to rise. Many movie and variety stars went over to freeload. Currently, the topic that was being discussed the most by netizens was the guests that Fiery Bird had invited. On Fiery Bird's official all-star match page, there were 12 figures in the special guest section, all grayed out. Jinro was also discussing this with his teammates. Someone just said that they saw Rex at Fiery Bird's headquarters, but they didn't have time to take pictures, Schwarzer said, flipping through the news online. Hearing this, an older team coach smiled with nostalgia. Rex was the white moonlight in my heart. Back then, he shined brightly throughout our middle school years. By the time we entered the professional circle, he had already retired. Let's not talk about Godder first. A reporter took a photo of Godbin. Didn't Godbin quit gaming to become a full-time dad and stay at home to play with the kid? Schwarzer was still unfamiliar with the names of these old gods. He hadn't even been born when these gods had become famous. Jinro knew a little about this person. Big Ben became a full-time nanny 10 years ago. Now, he's a full-time playmate and playmate at home. I heard that his son is a talented kid, not any worse than Big Ben. In another 5 years, he'll be able to reach the top of the pro scene. The front wave slapped on the beach series. The first 15 years you beat your son, and the next 15 years you get beaten by your son. Schwarzer couldn't help but laugh. No matter what kind of life these people led after retiring, they represented a generation and a kind of sentiment. Fiery Bird's sentimental marketing was pretty good. As they were talking, the few of them received a new notification. Let's go. Draw lots. Jinro and a few other Silver Wing members arrived at the designated location and drew their number cards. The godly players from the 12 continents would form 12 new teams based on the numbers they drew. Number 9? Jinro smiled. That's a good number. It's my lucky number. Beside him, Schwarzer let out a wretched cry. Number 1. Why am I so unlucky? Number 1, which was the first team, was the first to participate in the special guest match. Schwarzer was unhappy. The first team was too far ahead. He couldn't figure out this year's Fiery Bird strategy, and it would be difficult to deal with it. Perhaps he wouldn't even be able to display half of his heroism in-game. Looking at Jinro and the others, they had all drawn numbers 3 and above. Only he had drawn number 1. Schwarzer, who felt that his opening was not smooth, was depressed. However, the result could not be changed. He could only think about how to deal with the first match. There were 2 teams in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. Although the average duration of each match was only 30 minutes, there were other activities before and after the match, so the schedule was tight. According to the number, Schwarzer's match would be in the morning on the first day of the special guest match. Jinro would be 2 days later, so he had plenty of time to prepare. Jinro held his new team card and greeted his new teammates who had also drawn the 9 card. Bruce, you're also in Team 9? Jinro saw the captain of the Phoenix team from Huangzhou, Bruce. They were both captains, but in terms of overall rankings, Jinro's team was not as high as his opponents. On the individual leaderboards, Jinro was also 1 rank lower than his opponent. But if they really met, Jinro was not willing to lower his head. A team can only have 1 captain. How about it? Draw lots? Or do you want to compete? Jinro said, let's draw lots. It's simple and fast. Bruce had the same idea. A team could only have 1 captain. Once one was used to being a captain, who would be willing to be the vice-captain? In the end, Jinro's number was slightly higher than Bruce's. Jinro felt that his luck was really off the charts at this all-star match. He had a premonition that he would definitely explode at this time's all-star match. Looking at the news of Feng Zhao's thesis defense, many fans expressed their regret that Feng Zhao was too busy with his studies to participate, but Jinro was happy. He still remembered the time when Old Master Shui had said, strike a balance between work and rest. Feng Zhao had just finished a set of marches and had nowhere to vent his excitement. He had tormented a bunch of people to his heart's content. Luckily, he had been shrewd and pushed the blame to his son, so he had avoided the calamity. This time's all-star match happened to coincide with Feng Zhao's thesis defense. Feng Zhao could not come. Jinro was in a good mood. When it was time for the first special guest match, he saw the sorry state of Team 1. Sitting in the stands, Jinro laughed. Just 1 round of ferocious maneuvering, and the boss only took 5% damage. Their teamwork isn't good. The boss has strong defense and high damage. They have to outsmart it, said Bruce, who was the vice-captain of Team 9 due to his bad luck. Another godly player in Team 9 also said, "We have to understand that some special guests have never played Battle of the Century. The officials have to give them preferential treatment. Team 1's special guest will appear as a monster. I wonder what our team will encounter. I would rather the boss be a monster. That means the special guest has never played this game before. But if the boss is a human, then it will be more troublesome." Jinro expressed his approval. The day before the 9th match, Jinro represented his team to draw lots. "I'm good at drawing lots. My luck is especially good." The others in Team 9 believed Jinro's words. If Jinro was unlucky, how could he have beaten Bruce to become captain? They were all godly players. Why should he be captain? Everyone's ability was equal. Why should they listen to him? So later, Team 9 drew lots again. In the end, Jinro was still the best. They couldn't help but admire his luck. "All right, Captain Sheen, you draw. We believe you." Thus, Jinro drew lots under the watchful eyes of the godly players in Team 9. Survival mode? Chapter 447. What does survival mode mean? Were there such modes in previous special guest competitions? Is it a new one? Does this mean that our entire team of 20 will join forces to fight one? And as long as someone survives, it's a win? Who exactly is this biased towards? This special guest is playing a little too big. What did Fiery Bird give him? Smart armor? The kind that can destroy a large area with a big move? Everyone in Team 9 was filled with doubts. Fiery Bird had strengthened the special guest into a big boss. They could understand that the special guest was old, had slow reactions, and was unfamiliar with the game map. But what the hell was this survival mode? That means this special guest wants to wipe out our entire team? Too arrogant. This special guest used to play assassin, right? The map is a jungle. It's easy to hide, but it's also dangerous. Jinro's expression turned serious. "All right, let's discuss how we're going to play tomorrow." Because the mode they had encountered was unexpected, Team 9 spent a long time discussing it that night. The next day, the competition hall was packed. They were all celebrities in the gaming circles, and their pre-match interactions incited screams from the audience. Everyone in Team 9 was famous in the gaming circles and had many fans. Not only were there to watch the match, but there were also fans watching the live broadcast. 8 of the 12 special guests had already been unlocked on the big screen. In the past 2 days, these 8 special guests had appeared one after the other, triggering round after round of heated discussions. This was a carnival for the fans. Today was already the 3rd day of the special guest competition. There were still 4 special guests who had not appeared. Fiery Bird had kept them under wraps, and the entertainment reporters had not been able to dig out any information. Everyone could only speculate based on what they already knew. Before the first match of the 3rd day of the special guest competition, after the interactive segment, Team 9 had a short break to adjust their condition. In the lounge, Jinro even gave a pre-match pep talk. "Captain Jinro, aren't you worried? This mode is too weird," someone said. "No matter what mode he's in, I can face it. The person I'm afraid of isn't here, so I'm not worried." Jinro was brimming with confidence. This was not blind arrogance. Jinro was indeed capable. To be able to lead a top-ranked professional team and secure the position of captain, there was no need to doubt his ability. In the past, Feng Zhao had taught him a lot of experience and techniques from Battle of the Century. Coupled with his own research and accumulated combat experience, he was confident he could handle it. Besides, as the captain, even if he didn't have confidence, he had to show it. Even if he was panicking, he couldn't let others know. Thinking about his luck from the start of the All-Star competition until now, Jinro calmed down a bit. However, after hearing Jinro's words, Bruce, the vice-captain of Team 9, grasped an important point. "Someone who scares you? You mean Feng Zhao?" Jinro did not hide anything. As long as Feng Zhao does not come, I am not afraid of anything else. He did not feel that being afraid of Feng Zhao was something to be ashamed of. Anyway, he was not the only one who was afraid. Rumor has it that your Silver Wing members are all afraid of Feng Zhao, a bronze-skinned female member asked. Because her skin was slightly dark, she chose a black character in the game and was affectionately called Black Girl. Sister Black, you don't understand. Jinro had a solemn look on his face. The Feng Zhao in Battle of the Century will be especially ruthless. If you have the chance to meet him in the future, you will understand. As for this, you can ask the people who have crossed hands with Feng Zhao, but they might not be willing to say. Jinro did not feel that he was exaggerating. He had met so many people, but only Feng Zhao gave him the strangest feeling. He did not know how to crack it. The Feng Zhao in Battle of the Century simply did not give his opponent a chance to breathe once he made a move. The crazy point-sweeping demon was really not an exaggeration. Arriving at the arena, Jinro glanced at the special guest seats, unable to see the people sitting inside. Everyone in position, the match began. For this match, the in-game environment was a jungle. The jungles of the period of destruction were not a vast expanse of green. All sorts of brightly colored poisonous plants could be seen, as well as mutated beasts hiding within. It was full of danger. However, for the special guest match, Fiery Bird had simplified the environment and lowered the level of danger. But because of this, the members of Team 9 were even more cautious. If the environment was simplified, it meant that the boss would be harder to deal with. They would have to put more effort into fighting the boss, or perhaps find a place to hide and endure for 30 minutes. To deal with this situation, Jinro and the others had already formulated a plan last night. After the 20 people logged into the game, they quickly formed small teams and spread out. Follow the plan. Don't let the opponent control the rhythm, Jinro said. However, a minute passed. 10 minutes passed. The scattered team members picked up first aid kits and even more powerful firearms and weapons. Some people even found invisibility cloaks in a hidden basement. The audience watching the match was also confused. So this is a jungle treasure hunt? Survival mode. So it's actually this simple? Schwarzer, who was sitting in the stands, felt sour. He recalled his sorry state during the first match and then looked at Jinro and the rest of the team leisurely hunting for treasure. Could this be fate? However, Jinro was not so relaxed. They had not even seen the shadow of the boss. They did not even know if the opponent was human or beast. Special guest, are you online? Someone in Team 9 shouted with a laugh. After all, this was an exhibition match. Actually, it was not that serious. When the atmosphere was too tense, they could relax a little and be a little mischievous. However, these 10 minutes of leisure had indeed allowed some of the team members to relax. Wouter, there's a poor little thing in front. A member of Team 9 shouted to a teammate not far away. There was a player in Team 9 called Wouter, nicknamed the Master Dart Player. He was as fast as a leopard in the game. His dart skills were not 100% accurate, but 90% out of 100. In reality, he was a fat otaku. 1 out of every 100 hits was luck. Dart? No, only fat. Of course, his Master Dart Player ability was still very strong in the game. A mutated beast that was half the height of a human appeared. After hearing his teammates shout, Wouter casually threw a dart. The mutated beast fell to the ground without making a sound. His teammate gave Wouter a thumbs up. Not bad. The Master Dart Player is good at dart skills. It wasn't me. Wouter looked around cautiously. I was going to do a fancy triple dart, not a single dart kill. In the game, the mutated beasts that were killed would disappear. Before the killed mutated beast disappeared, Wouter found a broken knife in the mutated beast's neck. Wouter had goosebumps all over his body. He shivered and turned on his communicator to contact his teammates. The boss has appeared, however. Before he could finish speaking, his vision went black. Then, a "You have been disqualified" notification appeared. Wouter, who had been disqualified. I'm disqualified? How did I get disqualified? Jinro also realized that one of his online teammates was gone. He suddenly felt uneasy. He looked at the time. It was 10 minutes and 30 seconds into the game. After the first 10 minutes of peace, the first person was disqualified half a minute later. Another half a minute later, the second person was disqualified. Another half a minute later, the third person. In 3 minutes, 6 players from Team 9 had been disqualified. Every half-a-minute interval was extremely accurate and rhythmic. However, this rhythm was not right. Outside the game, the Silver Wing Polar Light team members were sitting in the stands. It's still the same maneuver. It's still the same feeling. Schwarzer was no longer sour. He touched his chest with a look of relief. I have a scary guess. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.